order. This is the workshop meeting to be here with you this morning. The first item on our agenda, if you will join me in rising for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just a couple comments before we get started into our agenda. Commissioner Britch is on vacation this week, and so he's not here with us. And we have the Deputy Commissioner, Ms. McGee, up here, and I told him it was a great upgrade for me. Just teasing, Commissioner. We appreciate all of y'all and do great work. And the Commissioner's had plenty of opportunity to be busy this year, and so I'm glad he's able to take a little bit of time off. And of course, our good friend, Mr. Kasperitz, our Vice Chair, is not with us here today either. He's on vacation as well. And frankly, both of those folks had done their due diligence and scheduled their vacation properly around this meeting, and then the Secretary moved the meeting date. And I moved the meeting date because I needed to be with the governor in Europe on a trade mission, and I don't like missing them, so I decided they were going to miss it instead of me missing it. So I apologize to both of them for doing that, but they scheduled it properly, and I just rescheduled it. So with that, let me just say one thing. We talked about Mr. Kasperitz, our friend Scott, at our last board meeting, but this would be his final board meeting, and you know, I've served with him for a long time, and Scott is a gentleman. He's a smart guy. He's prepared. He's tenacious, and he's just nice to be around. You know, and he and I don't always agree on everything, but we've learned how to do that without being disagreeable and while being friends, and I wish there was more of that. So I want to just thank him, salute him, and tell him we'll miss him, and he'll will hopefully stay connected outside of this venue. So with that, I'm going to move into the dispersed agenda. And the first item on our agenda this morning is the Periodic Regulatory Review and Regulatory Reduction Program. Ms. Joanne Maxwell. Good morning, Ms. Maxwell. I hope you're well today.
I'm well. I'm not sure about this mic. Good morning, Mr. Chair. I'm here to talk briefly about another regulatory review. In this particular case, we're going to be asking the CTB to look at the rules and regulations controlling outdoor advertising and other directional and signs. Briefly, just as a background and a reminder, I know you all have seen this before, basically any entity, any public body or agency that promulgates regulations is required under the APA to review those regulations periodically. Factors that you're looking at under the review are listed there, but primarily they're intended to make sure the regulations are up to date, don't require changes, aren't necessarily impacting or burdening certain entities such as businesses unfairly, et cetera. So that's sort of the list of considerations that we take into when we're looking at the regs under a review like this. There are also a couple of other authorities that govern what we are doing during the periodic reviews. One was EO 19 promulgated by Governor Youngkin. That the focus of that executive order is primarily to reduce the overall regulatory burden on the public. So besides all the other issues that we're looking at, we're also looking at reducing the impact or the burdens on the public by the regulations. As a result of this executive order, the governor created the ORM, Office of Regulatory Management. That office provides more detail as to how we go about looking at the reductions and some of the other economic impacts that we're looking at during the review. And then finally, Chapter 444 of the Acts of Assembly requires Department of Planning and Budget to report to the General Assembly those entities that are complying with the requirements of the APA. And more specifically, ORM's guidance regarding EO 19 has dictated or specified that agencies should reduce their regulatory burdens on the public by 25%. The good news is this board has met that challenge and that objective. That being said, that doesn't mean we are not going to continue to look at ways to, again, reduce the burden on the public. So despite the fact that we've met the reduction goal, we're still continuing to look at how we can continue to reduce the burden on the public. The particular reg that we're looking at this go-around is the rules and regulations concerning or controlling outdoor advertising, directional, other signs, and notices. Staff, in looking at this regulation, has made a preliminary determination that there are going to be some opportunities for streamlining and clarifying the regulation. So what that means is ultimately we're going to have to be doing a more thorough review, but at the initial outset, preliminarily, we've identified the need to go ahead and make some changes to the regs. So when you do a periodic review, there are basically two ways to do that. You can either file a notice that a periodic review is underway, public comments, and then you come back and decide what you want to do. In this case, like we're doing in this case, you can also just go ahead and file a notice of intended regulatory action, which means we already know that there are going to need to be changes. And so we're just going to skip the first step, in essence, file a notice of intended regulatory action, and let the public know this is what we're looking at, what we're intending to do. Under the general process, such as the one we will be using, we first file the notice of intended regulatory action, or NORA. That is subject to an executive review and then public comment for 30 days. Then we'll go into a proposed stage, which is where we'll actually make the changes to the regulation. The board will see those, and then we'll post those again. They will be subjected to, again, to executive review and then public comment for 60 days. And then finally, after all the public comments are gathered, if any, we'll go into the final stage where we make any changes if necessary, post for another 30 days, and then the reg becomes final. So bottom line, if at the next action meeting, the CTB authorizes the NORA, and for us to proceed with the NORA, we'll get your approval, and then VDOT will post the notice or the NORA, and then we will start looking at the regulation in more detail, looking at what we believe warrants change, et cetera. And we envision that we would have a proposed regulation ready to bring back to the CTB probably in the fall, no sooner than the fall. And then ultimately, the final stage we project for filing in mid or late 2026. So it's a bit of a process, but nevertheless, we're starting on that process today by presenting, and then in the next action meeting by obtaining your approval. Mr. Chair, that is all I have.
Thank you, ma'am. Are there any questions? Let me double down on this a little bit. As Joanne has told us, the governor created an Office of Regulatory Management when we came in, and he challenged us across all secretaries to cut at least 25% regulation. And VDOT frankly led the way in the Commonwealth and got lots of shout outs from the regulatory people for doing that. We have a regular cadence that we've been doing this forever. And Joanne's appeared a number of times on regulations since I've been on the board, 15 years. But we sped it up and dug a lot deeper. Across my secretariat, everybody's going to make their goals in this regard. And, it's not just about the 25%, it's about the impact of that. And really, they're just things that were unnecessary, duplicative, too much to read, too much to deal with, it didn't bring value, and we're getting rid of it. And we've also done things in the administration like creating dashboards and permit transparency, where we're tracking permits, and you put a permit in, and you can see where it is in the process, and set metrics around them. How long should it take? How long is it taking? Just basic stuff. But often that falls through the cracks in big organizations. They just tend not to do that for whatever reasons, and certainly you see that in government. So we're just trying to work at the speed of business, as the governor likes to say. Talking earlier, we were in in Europe for the Paris Air Show and a trade mission. And we met with some outstanding business people and outstanding businesses. These are world-class companies. And some of them are really small that are doing incredible things that'll just amaze you what they're doing. But I will tell you, the pace of how they operate is so different than sort of what I'll call normal pace. And when you get into that environment and people are just all about that, and it just makes you look at your everyday and say, I can do better here. And I think that's what we're about. We're just about doing better. We've seen that throughout all of our agencies. Same people, same place. How do we do better? And so this is part of that. I think we've done a pretty darn good job. I hope we'll continue to do that, and future administrations will continue to do that. And listen, you need regulation, right? You absolutely have to have regulation. The question is, how much and what does it do? And we think we've had too much, and it doesn't always do what we want it to do. So we're all about getting that remedied. So thank you, Joanne, for your time. Any other questions? Yes, Mr. Quibben.
Mr. Secretary, just a quick comment. First of all, I want to commend you and the staff for focusing on regulations, because regulations are really just a hidden tax on all activity, and they can be boring and they can be in the weeds, they can be complicated, but it's really important, I think, for the success of this organization, the Commonwealth, to be, to your point, be optimal in terms of the amount of regulatory oversight we have. I was just curious if at some point in the future we could have a before-after vision of just give us better appreciation for what you all have done in terms of streamlining regulations and how the work that you've done to cut back on regulations. And I have heard you commended, this department commended by the governor's office and others for how well we have done. If we may have just quick conversation in a future meeting about what that looks like so we can carry that out to other people.
Thank you, Ms. Maxwell. All right. Item number 2, the I-81 Corridor Improvement Program update, Mr. Ben Mandel. Good morning, Ben. How are you this morning?
Good morning, Mr. Secretary. Doing well, sir.
Nice and chilly in here.
Yes, sir. All right. Get my clicker working here. So this is the second update that we will be providing you this year. We started back in January with the kickoff and went through what we plan to do over the course of the year. But today, I want to bring you up to speed on the schedule and where we stand with activities, the work that we've done to date, as well as provide a little bit of context for the study itself, talk about the next round of public engagement that's coming up, as well as the ultimate end goal for where we're heading. So this is the same schedule that we presented to you back in January. The green line represents where we are today, which is in between the first round of public engagement, which occurred in April, and our second round of public engagement, which will be occurring in the middle of July. You can see that we're going to be coming back to you a number of times later this year as well. Just as a recap, back in 2018, we developed the original corridor improvement plan. And as a result of that, we had legislation that was passed in 2019 to create the Corridor Improvement Fund. To date, 65 projects from that plan have advanced to the program, and they are either constructed or advancing towards construction. So we are working through an update right now to identify the next tranche of projects. What we learned from the initial study is that we need some sufficient time to get in and do some preliminary engineering and right-of-way on these projects. They are large and complex. The more time that we have for that, the better we will be positioned to advance once the revenues become available and hit the ground running with those projects. We are also using a performance-based planning and programming process on this, and ultimately using a smart scale-like process to identify the projects that ultimately make it into that plan. I also wanted to provide a little bit of context. Many of the board members were not here in 2018 when we did the original plan. I-81 is a corridor of significance. It is the longest interstate within Virginia. It is not only the main street for the Shenandoah Valley and Blue Ridge, connecting 30 colleges and universities, 13 counties, 45 cities and towns. It is also the freight corridor in Virginia. carries over 43% of the statewide interstate truck VMT and over $300+ billion worth of goods each year. Now, another challenge that the corridor faces is terrain. It's unique in that it traverses the Blue Ridge Mountains and Shenandoah Valley. As you can see on this elevation profile, which is a little bit exaggerated to fit it onto the slide, there is significant elevation gain on the corridor. And why is that significant? It goes back to the previous slide where we talked about it being the freight corridor in Virginia. When you combine trucks and terrain and elevation gains like this, it's a serious challenge. Many segments of the 81 corridor carry over 25% of their vehicular traffic as heavy trucks. Diving down into that a little bit more, we talked about trucks and terrain and what that impact is. On level terrain, one truck feels like 2 passenger cars, and that's if they are following at a safe distance. We talked with the Secretary about this. We're not making this up.
Let me jump in here, folks. The Secretary is not buying that data. The Secretary believes that, yeah, 15, that's more like it. But even on level, right, that's fine when you're going 65 miles an hour at a steady stream, right? When you're going 25 or 30 and starting and stopping, it's not 2. It's just not, right? We all know that anecdotally. So yeah, I agree with that. On level terrain, when you're rolling along, yeah, it's twice as much. It's twice as big. It's actually longer than twice as big. But the clunkiness of trucks, and I don't say that in a mean way or a bad way. I mean, it's just true. You got a massive vehicle that you're slowing down and starting up, and you know, it's not 2, right? It's just not. So I think these numbers are conservative, Ben.
Yes, sir. But we are using highway capacity manual methodology, so we're
Yeah,
gonna
well, I'm
stick
using the
with that.
Shep Miller anecdotal 53 years of driving methodology.
But when you combine this with terrain and the trucks that we see on 81, many segments that maybe have 75,000 vehicles a day on them actually feel like they have about 95,000 vehicles. And when you're on a facility that's a 2-lane interstate, 95,000 vehicles is a significant amount of traffic to be engaging with.
The point is, with that many vehicles, that many trucks, and terrain like it is, and then stop and go, it is hugely impactful. We all know that, right? Okay.
Another challenge that we've seen along 81 is safety and reliability. And over the last 5 years, the overall trend for crashes has been ticking up steadily. That has mirrored the overall increase in traffic that is along the corridor. But we have said in the past, when we've briefed you, that the 81 program projects, with its implementation, things are going to get worse before they get better. And we can actually see that here. If you look at the increase in crashes overall crashes over the last 5 years, 40% of that increase is actually attributable to crashes within the work zone. And so, since 2019, we've seen many more active work zones along the 81 corridor than we have in prior years. There is also a good news story here. The clearance time for major incidents, and those are where we define having 4 more hours of a lane closure, has dropped steadily since 2019. We've seen a 67% decrease in that number. And we'd like to say that some of that can be attributable to the investments that were made back in 2019 in the operational end of things. We've invested in more safety service patrol coverage along the corridor, and we've also invested in TRIP, which is our towing and recovery program, where we have vehicles stationed along the corridor to clear out major incidents where we have overturned tractor trailers and such. So we're hoping that there is a correlation between those two. We think that there is. So that's one good news story that has come out of it. I'm going to give you a brief update on where we've been working the last 6 months. I know we haven't been here since January, but we have been steadily doing work behind the scenes, and we've had our first round of public engagement. Also going to talk to you about the next round of public engagement and where we're going to go after that. So just performance measures that we used, These are the same performance measures that we used back in 2018, the original plan. We looked at the top 25% locations along the corridor, crash severity, crash frequency, person hours of delay, and person hours of incident delay. We've looked at that in both directions at 1 mile segment levels. So we've been able to compile all of that information. It was also had a little bit of caveats in terms of the assumptions that we included. We did take out the 2020 pandemic year data and excluded that. We also excluded those segments that are either under construction for major widening, which includes adding additional lane or truck climbing lane, or those that are planned to go to construction within the next 2 to 3 years. We've removed those from consideration as a top 25% location with the anticipation that we're going to have to see how those improvements actually impact the traffic and evaluate those afterwards, but we really don't have enough of a history there to evaluate them yet. The anticipation is that we're going to be looking at other locations along the corridor. This is just a summary table of those top 4 performance measures for each of the districts. You can see that Bristol and Salem have roughly the same centerline miles, 88 and 89 respectively. Stanton has 150 of the corridor. And we have, of course, a significant amount of more of those performance measures. We have had our first round of public engagement. That was virtual, and we did that the first 2 weeks of April. This was done via public input on our website, and we had over 4,000 comments and 4,700 participants in that. We provided the information on those top 25% locations for performance measures, and we also asked the public to validate their experience driving along the corridor. Is that data what they actually experience on a daily basis as they drive the corridor? They had the ability to identify location-specific issues as well as provide written and open-ended comments. In terms of a summary, you can see from the location-specific issues that were identified, the top 4 there, congestion, truck operations, safety, and speeding and aggressive driving, accounted for 92% of all of the location-specific comments that we received. So I think there was some consistency across the various districts and along the corridor. In terms of the written comments, we dove in and looked through and summarized those as well. The top 5, you'll see there on the left-hand side: need for additional lanes, congestion and backups, heavy truck volumes, frequent crashes and safety concerns, as well as aggressive and high-speed driving. When we took a deeper dive and looked at those at the district level, we noticed that capacity and congestion concerns, truck volumes, and also safety concerns around specific interchanges and ramps were the leading comments that were provided. What was interesting to us is that those comments were actually focused in areas that we have program projects for from the original 2018 plan. So it was a little bit of a validation for us in terms of the public was actually providing us feedback with the issues that we have the most concern with, we actually are already focused on and actually planning to deliver projects on in the next 2 to 3 years. In terms of the next round of public engagement, we're going to be going out along the corridor the week of July 14th. We will have 4 in-person meetings, 2 in the Stanton district, 1 in the northern end, 1 in the southern end, and 1 each in Bristol and Salem districts. We're going to be presenting maps with the potential solutions driven by those performance measures. We're going to have capital improvement recommendations as well as operational improvements. There will be another online survey to gather public comment on those potential solutions, and we will be providing all those materials online. And you can see the dates and times. You'll note that the second in-person meeting is in Winchester on the 15th. That coincides with the board meeting that will be in Winchester that day. All are invited to attend if you have time. I think you have probably a full agenda that day, but we'd love to have you. This is just an example of the display boards that we'll be taking out. I know it's a little bit hard to see on the screen here, but these boards are actually 7 feet long and 3 feet tall. The top half of the board shows where we have those performance measure issues in the top 25%, as well as where we have programmed widening projects that we are excluding. There are dots that coincide with the amount of comments that were received from the public in that first round of public engagement associated with those 1 mile segments. And on the bottom half of the board, we have identified the potential solutions that we are recommending carrying forward, as well as where we have program 2018 plan. In terms of next steps, the study team is going to be using the public feedback from those July meetings to help further refine and recommend solutions back to this board, as well as the 81 Advisory Committee. We're going to be holding another round of fall public meetings, and they will be in-person meetings along the corridor, where we present those refined solutions that have been prioritized using a smart scale-like process, with the intent to present those refined solutions to both the advisory committee and this board. And we are still anticipating adopting an updated corridor improvement plan this December. That sort of concludes my presentation. If there are any comments or questions.
Calling anybody but Mr. Lawson. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Lawson. What I meant to say is, Mr. Lawson, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I'm curious, you top 25%, do we have a top 5%? Have we been able to drill down where are the most critical areas on the I-81 corridor?
Yes, we can do that as well. Yes, sir.
We
have
don't just stop at 20, we sort of start at the top and go down to we hit 25, so yeah, we absolutely know.
Is it possible to see that, to see those lists? And I'm happy to look at the 25,
Sure.
but I'd also like to really drill down, have a sense of where they are. But you talk about validation. I'd like to see if we're
We can absolutely give you that.
cross-referencing that.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Secretary,
Dr. Smoot,
I have observed that a considerable amount of construction of sound walls seems to be a part of some of these projects. Is that a federal requirement? And if so, and just succinctly, what determines whether a sound wall is installed at any given location or not?
before Ben answers that, the general answer is yes, in terms of the federal things. There is some flexibility that you can go through, and I can tell you we've done that in various locations throughout the Commonwealth. Flexibility in terms of, is it a solid wall, is it a see-through wall, can you get rid of it? Sometimes you can get rid of it if the residents around it say, I don't want it. So there's processes you can go through, but generally, it's a sound and a location. Kathy and Ben, you can help me out. Ma'am, it's a sound and location situation.
So the residents in that location have a voice in whether there will or will not be?
They can.
They can?
They
Okay.
can. Am I saying that right, Ben? Because I know in Hampton.
Sir, anywhere we expand the capacity of the interstate by adding an additional lane, we have to consider the inclusion of sound walls, and we also have to take into account the number of receptors, which would be homes or other institutions like schools, and the proximity and the distance from where that improvement's occurring.
But help me with this. So in the 64 Express Lanes project in Hampton Roads, in the city of Hampton, we've had a bunch of discussion about sound walls, and there's some stuff people want to see, so they don't want it to be solid, they want it to be see-through. There's other people that don't want it at all, and there's a process we've gone through there. You basically have to survey the surrounding homeowners and get a certain percent, and da-da-da-da. I don't know all the math on it. But basically, if everybody says we don't want it and we don't care about the sound, then there's ways out. Is that fair, Ben?
Sir, yes.
And in many cases, the interstate was there before the adjacent homes or whatever were there.
In many cases, yeah, but we're making it worse, if you will, as we expand. And so the requirements, it says you will do X unless Y, and we go through that process.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. We don't just sort of decide. Yes, Mr. Laird.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. In our January meeting, I believe we, on this area, we spoke of 4 projects that were next in the queue. And part of the discussion was about analyzing those 4 projects and how they came out in the ranking, once they were reassessed. May we see those also?
Yes, sir. Those projects that were included, based on our discussion in January, are actually included in the potential solutions that we are taking out to the public in July.
And we'll highlight those for you, if that's what you'd like to see. They're still in. But we
We will be
reanal-
evaluating.
I mean, Mr. Lawson was key in this too. We put those in the analysis, so we didn't accept them as done. We said, reanalyze all of them, including those 4, and see what it spits out. So yeah, we'd be happy to provide that to you.
Well,
Awesome. Yes, sir.
Further to that, as I recall, and I thank Mr. Laird for bringing this up, was to do a comparable, because we were reminded some of these, this goes back to 18, and things have changed, and how that has affected those projects. They could have been very important then, not so much now, or something else has risen up, or it's gotten that much worse.
Yeah, so we just took the data from our most recent data, ran everything, including those 4, and see what pops out. So yeah, we'd
Smart.
be happy to give that to you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Ms. Dunlop, well, Ms. Sellers?
So the one I'm interested in is the insufficient truck parking in the comments, because I believe it's probably a problem anybody near an interstate deals with. And how, what's being said, is it from the trucking industry, is it from the locals? Because in local government, you hear that a lot, and we're seeing it on 95, where they park along the interstate, they park on the on-ramps, and they're just overflowing, and I don't know if there's any thought to how we help that.
There is a significant amount of truck parking on interstate ramps along the 81 corridor. I will tell you that. And with the amount of trucks that are on the corridor, it is a challenge. We looked at that in 2018 and looked at the existing safety rest areas that we have along the corridor and tried to identify locations where we could add potentially additional spaces for truck parking in each one of those. To the extent that we can, I think we've restriped most of those to accommodate additional trucks. I think the big question that we've had traditionally, and Mr. Secretary, you can jump in here, but we've heard from the private truck stop owners along the corridors when we've tried to have, I guess,
There's a
significant
balance.
expansion.
There's balance. It's sort of like, if there are not enough gas stations, does the Commonwealth build gas stations? What if there's not enough food? Do we build food stations? What if there's not enough? So there's balance, because the private sector is providing some of this, right? And we don't want to step on their toes and start competing with them. At the same time, if they're not doing it, what do we do? Because it's impacting the roads and it's impacting that. So it's not always an easy answer. We don't have all the tools in the toolbox. So it's something we continue to struggle through that a little bit.
It's probably not very popular in local governments. I imagine it isn't, to put up a big truck stop.
Well, we wouldn't do a truck stop, we just do truck parking as a Commonwealth, but, but then is that peeling away from the private sector? Mr. Davis?
More and more along 95. Wonder if there's something we can do to help it.
I think that's not just on 81, it's not just in Virginia either. So we'll continue to grapple with that. Ms. Dunlop?
Yes, I'm curious about the makeup of the population of commenters. And how do you get the word out about inviting people to participate?
We provided a news release along the corridor. We also provided an email blast to an extensive distribution list. We even got some names and emails from Mr. Lawson. We also had a distribution list associated previously with our Improve 81 website and the work that's already underway with a number of projects that are along the corridor. We also used social media to do a blast, if you will, during the 2-week period, which was pushed out through Facebook, Instagram, X, trying to get as much feedback as possible. I will note that when we do those social media pushes, we see a significant uptick in the participation on online surveys. And that's not just for 81, that's for all online surveys that we do across the Commonwealth. So that is a facet of every online engagement that we do, is using social media to push that information out. But we've reached out to all the MPOs, PDCs, localities along the corridor and asked.
Did you find that a most significant number of the commenters are government officials, or are they private individuals or businesses?
Vast majority are private individuals. We do get comments from the MPOs and PDCs and local governments along there, and some emergency responders. We hear from sheriffs, police departments along the corridor, fire, EMS. They have a lot of comments because they are the ones responding to incidents when they occur on the corridor. So.
Anybody else?
Before Ben sits down.
Deputy Commissioner.
Thank you. I just want to let everyone know that Ben has certainly been the face of the I-81 CIP efforts for a very long time now. But he has also recently been named our Division Administrator for Transportation Planning and Mobility Planning. And so I just want to let you all know that. We're very excited to have him in that role, and we know that he's going to do an amazing job. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Ben. Congratulations. All right, anyone else? All right, thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is item number 3, the Governor's TPOF project funding report. Mr. Lawson.
Good morning, Mr. Secretary and members of the board. It's a pleasure to be here this morning to bring to you an exciting item. In today's meeting, you will be asked to approve a TPOF funding allocation that was directed by the governor. This TPOF funding action is part of an important partnership amongst engaged stakeholders to fund the I-64 Exit 211 Interchange Improvement Project in New Kent. As you may recall, we added this project, or you added this project into the consensus scenario last month at a reduced funding level. That reduced funding level was due to savings that we were able to find by combining parts of this project and increased levels of funding from other funding partners. This project will support significant economic development and investment to both the north and south sides of the interchange that will bring thousands of jobs and residential units to the area. As this project was considered, the potential for the development and economic investment in the area made it apparent that this project needed to move forward and need to move forward quickly. The governor has said that he is thrilled to partner with New Kent County, CVTA, the CTB, and others to deliver the funds to support necessary transportation investments along the booming I-64 corridor. With its proximity to the port and the I-64 widening project fully underway, this corridor is attracting major investments, a win for the county and the Commonwealth. Mr. Rodney Hathaway, the county administrator for New Kent, is here with us today, along with Supervisor Moyer and staff, to talk to you about the little bit about the project, but mostly about the economic development opportunities and plans that are happening in this corridor. So with that, Mr. Hathaway.
Welcome, Mr. Hathaway.
Welcome. Thank you.
Great to be with you.
Thank you, Secretary Miller, members of the Commonwealth Transportation Board. We're excited about this opportunity. It truly has been a partnership. Definitely New Kent wants to recognize and thank our representative, Mr. Davis, Rex Davis. We've worked very closely in moving this project forward. And this morning, I'm going to briefly share a little about the project and hopefully leave some time for questions. And I want to start by saying, New Kent County, we've recently finished the rewrite of our comprehensive plan, which will guide growth and development in New Kent for the next 20 years and beyond. The number one goal of that comprehensive plan is actually to retain our rural character. We're proud of our rural character in New Kent. That's what draws people to the county. We have the highest growth rate in the Commonwealth. We have for the past decade. And we don't see that slowing down. But while accommodating growth, we want to keep who we are. And our plan to do that is simply to concentrate growth around the 4 exit ramps of I-64. So therefore, it's extremely important that we have the proper infrastructure in place at those exit ramps to move forward with that plan. Looking at those 4 exit ramps, 2 exit ramps are designated for heavy commercial industrial type development. That's exit 220, and the exit we're talking about today, exit 211.
Can you move the slide forward, please?
For a minute. Okay.
Backwards. There we go.
Okay, all right. This is a schematic of the planned improvements to the exit 211 and interchange. What's being planned here is actually the construction of a divergent diamond. There's already a plan in place, and there has been for a year or so, to rebuild the existing bridge over Interstate 64. Now, with this plan that's proposed, it will build an additional new bridge right alongside the existing bridge to create the divergent diamond. There'll also be extensive work to the exit ramps as far as widening and a realignment. There will be the conversion of a roundabout that will serve as the entrance into the new Buc-ee's development that is planned. That will become a signalized intersection. And the improvements will begin at what we call Jimmy Burrell Lane, which serves as access to 2 truck stop facilities, Love's and Pilot, and it will extend just past the entrance going into Buc-ee's. We are excited about the Buc-ee's project. We've been working very closely with that group. The original plan was for Buc-ee's to begin their improvements in advance of the county. Now the plan is to do all the improvements at one time, which I think is the way to go, the best way to move this project forward. It will push back the planned opening of Buc-ee's to the first quarter of 2028, which is currently planned. This is a $94 million project. $18.3 million has come from the regional fund of the Central Virginia Transportation Authority. $20 million has been committed from New Kent County, utilizing our local share of Central Virginia Transportation Authority funds. The way the Central Virginia Transportation Authority works is, you're all familiar with the gas tax and sales tax that is collected by the authority, but half of what's collected in New Kent comes directly back to New Kent. And then 35% goes to a regional pool, and 15% goes to the Greater Richmond Transportation. GRTC, the Transit Authority. We're excited and very thankful of the award of $18.2 million from the Smart Scale Fund. Buc-ee's is contributing $17.5 million, and then the recent discussion today, TPOF funds totaling $20 million will fully fund the planned transportation improvements. I have to remind the residents of New Kent County, this is not just a Buc-ee's project. This project is far more important than just Buc-ee's, even though Buc-ee's is very important to the county, and we're looking forward to having them in our locality. But just last week, we had members of our Board of Supervisors and our Economic Development Authority tour the Norfolk International Terminals, Port of Virginia. And in talking with their staff, one of the biggest challenge, and as you are aware, they're making tons of investments into those facilities and expanding operations there. One of their biggest challenges is land right now, land for the warehousing and distribution centers for their business partners. It's becoming difficult to find in Virginia, and we have opportunities to accommodate that. And we've recently have announced two big projects. One being AutoZone, the other being a Target distribution center, and there's more on the way, which we'll talk about. On the south side of the exit ramp, we have New Kent City Center. It's zoned economic opportunity. A portion of it is zoned industrial. There's also an application coming before the board soon to rezone additional land for industrial-type uses. New Kent City Center is the location of AutoZone, an 800,000 square foot warehousing and distribution center that opened the beginning of the year, and they're in the hiring process, but they are in full operation now. There's 1,420 acres available in this property, and we're actively working with the Virginia Economic Development Authority and Hampton Roads Alliance on major projects for the Commonwealth. Also, I'd like to mention too, we've recently had the announcement of a $1.4 million warehousing distribution center that's going to be constructed by Target. That site work is under development right now. On the north side of the exit, we have Farms in New Kent, a very large planned unit development, a mixed-use development. This is where Buc-ee's is going to be located at. Again, their planned opening is first quarter 2028. We anticipate annually this facility will attract 9 million visitors. This is going to be huge for the county. There's also other retail opportunities in the work that's being planned right now, about 250,000 square feet, but the zoning is approved for up to 950,000 square feet of commercial. This development is also approved for 2,500 residential dwellings. And I believe that there's just under 1,000 to be built, and we anticipate that the development will be complete with the construction of residential dwelling by 2030. This is a look at New Kent City Center. The green area is the AutoZone property. The orange area just below that is interesting. New Kent County has just approved a site plan for a 1 million square foot warehousing and distribution center owned by the Matten Group. They plan to construct this as a spec building. The Matten Group also has a master plan that also involves a 500,000 square feet distribution center, a 200,000 square foot facility, and a 90,000 cross dock facility, all within that orange area. And actually, they believe that they can accommodate up to 2 million square feet of development. The blue area, New Kent City Center, is owned by SPF Investments, the Shire family. We're currently working with the Shire family right now to design an access into that blue area, which would involve crossing a major wetlands. The purple area on the bottom, that is where the Target warehousing and distribution center will be located. There's also a couple of hundred acres left for additional development within that property as well. And I've mentioned the AutoZone, Matten, Target. Project Cocoa is a project that we're working with the state, which will be probably one of the larger announcements, hopefully, in Virginia as far as manufacturing this year. It will involve 200 highly skilled jobs, well over $1 billion of investment, and it does involve defense manufacturing. This is just a breakdown of the farms in New Kent. It is divided into 5 land bays. The majority of the commercial development is going to be next to the interstate exit, which is in Land Bay 5, and that is where Buc-ee's will be located as well. And the next slide just shows the master plan of the farms in New Kent, which was approved in May 2005. It consists of approximately 2,500 acres, 2,500 dwellings, and it's approved for 950,000 square feet of commercial space. So I know this was a very brief overview. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So folks, let me just make a few comments before I take questions. Mr. Hathaway has a very smooth and sort of low-key presentation style, right? And so he says these things as it's no big deal, right? Folks, look at these numbers. Like, okay, AutoZone, 800,000 square feet. I was down there to dig some dirt a couple years ago. Matin, 2 million square feet, and he started. I talked to him the other day, and he's excited. Target, right? Another, how many square feet is that, Rodney?
1.4 million.
1.4 million square feet, right? Rolling. The farms at New Kent, 2,500 dwellings, 950 square feet of commercial. This is all new stuff, right? The defense thing, right? We already have Pilot, we already have Love's, and now we're gonna have Buc-ee's on top of that. This is like unbelievable. I mean, it is a great story, and it's a story that the port's been talking about, and we've been talking about, Wayne, for a number of years, you know, and it was get the ports. It's the most efficient port in North America. It's rocking, right? Shippers want to come there. Then you establish these distribution centers, and they have to come there, right? Then you do a doubling of the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, and it changes the game. Then you add 2 lanes into the gap to make the whole thing smooth, and you see what's happening. And that's the way it works. It's fantastic. And I love what you're doing, Mr. Hathaway, in terms of trying to maintain your rural character and bunch your stuff together against the interstate. This is a game changer for New Kent County. This isn't the New Kent of 15 years ago, I can tell you that. And it's just fantastic. And so, you know, when we were struggling to try to get this thing figured out, everybody came to the table. CVTA came to the table. I said, folks, we don't have that. We don't have it. You got to come to the table. New Kent came to the table, right? The governor came to the table. And then I got to negotiate with Buc-ee's, and I said, Buc-ee's, it's not going to happen on your timeline unless you give us some help. So they gave us the largest amount they've ever given anybody. And this guy who runs this company, he didn't get to where he is by throwing money around, I can tell you that. So we got them to throw in the last tranche that we needed to get it done at $17.5 million. And listen, so this is about the people of New Kent and the people of Virginia. That's what this is about. It's really exciting. I got my New Kent cup, Mr. Hathaway.
All right.
And Miss Page is looking down on us.
Yes.
Smiling the whole time.
Yes.
So I said what I need to say. Now, are there any questions? Dunlop.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Secretary. How will this impact the taxes on the citizens of New Kent? All this new commercial activity and so forth?
Well, you know, we're very proud to say that we have one of the lowest tax rates in the Richmond region, Middle Peninsula, and Peninsula area currently. And definitely this new commercial development will help us maintain that.
Great.
Because as we grow, there definitely is a cost with growth as well. But with the new business activity, the businesses hopefully.
This isn't Alaska
pay the
yet. They're not
lion's
going to
share.
send a check to everybody in the county, but but it's sort of like it, right? It's amazing.
Yes.
It's what happens, and I don't want to get up and down that rabbit hole too far, but the data center thing, what that does to some communities is just unbelievable, where it doubles a county's revenue with one data center. I mean, we've seen that. It's phenomenal what it does. And so I think it's fantastic. Yes, sir, Mr. Coleman.
I just want to double down on what you were saying, that it was a struggle to get the gap funding. And this will reimburse the state in spades with this initiative to improve the gap, because without the gap, this wouldn't have happened. I don't believe. But the
Without the
revenues
Bridgestone,
and
without
the
the gap.
jobs created from this is just, it's outstanding. It's what a model should be, that you had the courage to push for the gap expansion on 64 that made this possible.
I will say that led by Barry Knight made the gap happen, right? It just, that's what it was. They came up with a lot of general fund money to make that happen. And it was the legislature and the governor together that did that, and Chairman Knight at the time led that charge. And so I got to have a hand in it, and I pushed and pulled, but that's who got it done at the end of the day. So, listen, this is just great for Virginia, and it would have been a mess, a total mess, if we didn't do this. So, thank you, Mr. Hathaway. Thank you, Mr. Moore. Thank you, Mr. Chudzinski. Questions? Mr. Lawson? Okay. Thank you. Appreciate you being here. The next item on the agenda is item number 4, Smart Scale Proposed Project Cancellation, Route 1 at East Glebe Road in the Northern Virginia District. Ms. Pryor, good morning.
Good morning, Mr.
Welcome.
Secretary.
I hope you're well.
I am, thank you. This morning, I'm going to be presenting to you a proposed smart scale cancellation in the city of Alexandria. Just as a reminder, once a project is selected for funding through the smart scale process, only the board can cancel it, and so that's why these come to you. The Route 1 at East Glebe Road intersection improvement project was submitted by the city of Alexandria in round 4 of smart scale. The original project cost was $3.1 million, and it was fully funded with district grant funds. The original scope included some intersection improvements at Route 1 and Glebe Road to add some turn lanes, upgrade the signal infrastructure, and widen pedestrian facilities. The benefits were due primarily to land use. This is just a snapshot of the statistics related to the project. Again, the cost was $3.1 million. It scored 64.52, which is a large score, high score. It ranked number 1 out of 11 in the district cohort. The project has not yet started, so it has no expenditures. After the project was selected, the city conducted an updated traffic analysis, and that analysis revealed several things. One was that the benefits associated with the project would be limited in comparison to what was anticipated to be some significant community disruption associated with the project. They also determined that other planned infrastructure projects in the area were expected to address the concerns at the intersection of Route 1 and Glebe Road. They also determined that moving ahead with the project would require significant time and effort from city staff, which they believed could better be directed towards other higher impact initiatives within the city. So in March, the city requested cancellation of this project. I'll be bringing this back to you all for action in July. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Question, Mr. Gribbin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Pryor. Yes, I would just, first of all, like to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for giving us the opportunity to have an extra month to work with the city of Alexandria on this project. The city has withdrawn the project, and I'd just like to take a moment to address their recent decision regarding the smart scale project, the application for Duke Street and Route 1. First, I want to recognize the merits of the project Ms. Pryor has and the effort that went into preparing the application. The project scored very well and demonstrates a clear alignment with the goals of this program. I appreciate the board's decision at the last meeting to defer a decision until this month, as it gave us time to work with the City of Alexandria to get a better understanding of the progress they've made toward project delivery. After some internal discussion in the interest of maintaining a constructive and forward-looking relationship with the Commonwealth and this body, the city has made the decision to withdraw its application from consideration at this time. So over the past year, the city has taken active steps to strengthen its project delivery capacity. There has been close coordination with state partners to assess internal processes, implement reforms, and accelerate progress under a number of ongoing projects. I appreciate the city's decision to focus on implementation at this time and believe this approach supports the long-term success of both this project and the broader program objectives. And I want to sort of end by thanking the City of Alexandria and VDOT staff, particularly the division office, in working together to get us to the right answer in the right way in regards to this project.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Let me double down on that for a second. You know, it's no secret that we've struggled with some of our localities in terms of budget and time, on budget. And certainly we've had some of those issues in Alexandria. And so this is part and parcel of that, and we've had lots of discussions. I just got to tip my hat to the mayor. The mayor who took office at the beginning of the year, has embraced this, has taken it on as a challenge. She has been gracious and thoughtful in her communications with us, and we're going to get this worked out, right? To your point, Mr. Griffin, I think our staff and the Alexandria staff are working great together. We're going to make sure that they're in good shape, and I think the mayor's committed to that. I think she's taking the right tact, and I'm just really excited about that opportunity going forward. So it's exactly what we want to do, is to partner with these folks to get them where they need to be. And she has jumped in with both feet and endorsed that. And I just wanted to say thank you to her.
Mr. Secretary, if I could just, as a point of clarification, this
This
particular
isn't that one, I know.
this particular project is a different project being proposed for cancellation next month. It is part of the city's ongoing efforts to reprioritize, refocus their efforts, as you've mentioned, Mr. Secretary. I believe Mr. Gribben's comments are specifically related to a round 6 application that the city withdrew. Again, all part of a
It's all
global
part
effort.
and parcel of the same
Yes.
conversation, so it all applies. But yes, this is a different project than the Duke Street project. But my point to you is the same. Alexandria, you know, we pushed on them hard. They accepted that. They took responsibility. They stepped up to the plate and said, all right, here's what we're going to do. And that's what they're doing, and that's exactly how we're going to get successful together. So I'm really excited about that, Mr. Gribben. And thank you for your work in working with them and in that regard, because you've been instrumental there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, anyone else? Thank you, Ms. Pryor. Next item on the agenda is item 5, the 2026-2031 Commonwealth Transportation Fund 6-year financial plan and the fiscal year 2026 CTF and VDOT budgets. Ms. Laura Farmer, good morning.
Morning, Mr.
Hope
Secretary.
you're doing well.
I'm well. How are you?
Thank you.
Good. This morning, I'm going to give you an update to the April presentations we provided. We provided the draft 6-year financial plan, as well as the draft budgets for 2026. I'm just going to overview what's changed since that April presentation and the information we provide to you today. So the 6-year financial plan identifies the planned funding and the allocations to all modes of transportation that receive funding from the Commonwealth Transportation Fund. It also includes other sources such as federal and participating revenue from others. The 6-year financial plan for this 6-year period allocates $58.3 billion from all revenue sources. This includes $1.5 billion of planned debt over the period for Route 58, the financing of I-81's improvements, as well as Garvey bonds and the new authorization we discussed in April for special structures. It also transfers about $6.4 billion to the 3 regional entities, as well as the dedicated funding for the WMATA Capital Fund of $1 billion. It also includes dedicated fuel tax revenues to 81 of $554 million, as well as just over $18 billion for maintenance and operations. That is both VDOT as well as our payments to support localities. The planned 6-year period has $16.8 billion worth of construction, and $2.8 billion of that is money provided from others, both localities and regional funding. This slide just provides a view of the state resources coming into the Commonwealth Transportation Fund and the revenue estimate. There is no change since April. This represents the revenue estimate we received in December. Just one comment about the current year of fiscal year 2025 through the end of May. We've received just over 93% across these sources. So there's a good chance we might end the year exceeding the revenue forecast for the current fiscal year.
We're going to,
For updates since April, we've incorporated the general fund dollars that were dedicated to 81 in the Appropriations Act of $175 million. These funds represented a dedication of fiscal years 2024 surplus committed to I-81 in the previous budget and needed to be appropriated to the I-81 program. We also adjusted the general fund commitment to WMATA and allocated it in fiscal year 2026, so just reduced it by $7.8 million to match the actions of the General Assembly. In terms of federal revenue, with congressional approval of a full year of allocation for the current federal fiscal year 25, we were able to incorporate an additional $59 million into all federal programs across our assumptions, and those are incorporated into 2026. We had some small adjustments for the required state match on a few federal programs to make that change. We also worked with DRPT to update our Federal Transit Administration assumptions over the planning period. Across that, it's an increase of $8.4 million. We incorporated regional transportation from the 6-year program. There was a significant increase in the allocations provided from the regional bodies across the 6-year period that we've incorporated, totaling $851 million. We had a small change for the exempt permit revenue based on those actuals. When local assistance briefed you last month, the exempt permit fees are a component of the payments to localities, and they're divided based on lane mileage between VDOT maintained miles and localities. We've also incorporated the assumptions related to interest earnings across both the Transportation Partnership Opportunity Fund and the Virginia Transportation Infrastructure Bank over the period. These funds received the interest earnings from VDOT's operating funds, and that's expected to be $529 million over the planning period. We've also had a few updates related to toll facilities.
Ms. Farmer, can you stop a second?
Yes, sir.
So this is sort of a little bit in the weeds, but what we just looked at with New Kent and the TPOF money, which will help fund this project, which is an action we will vote on in the action meeting. It's coming out of this interest earnings. So the interest earnings on our deposited funds, which are substantial because of the way that we're funded versus the way that we operate, flow into these economic development banks, if you will. The infrastructure bank, which is a loan bank, and then the TPOF, which can be a loan or grant. So they're to us in terms of being able to do these kinds of things. And there's substantial resources that go into that. So I just want to draw your attention to this is what funds what we're doing in the action meeting and other times with TPOF and VTIB. Frankly, VTIB probably needs some tweaking to make it better, but it's part of those programs. Thank you, Ms. Farmer.
Thank you. So related to actions of the General Assembly, the governor's proposed budget required that all tolls, fees, and other charges related to the Coleman Bridge end no later than January 1st of 2026. So that related to adjustments in the budgetary assumptions. We reduced approximately $2.9 million in the fiscal year 2026 revenue estimate and completely removed all toll revenues for Coleman Bridge going forward for the remainder of the planning period. The language also required that any remaining amount due to toll facility revolving account, which is an account that VDOT administers that once received those interest earnings many years ago, no longer has a dedicated revenue stream beyond its cash balances and the loans that are due to it. So any remaining amount due to that fund, which is the remaining debt that the Coleman Bridge has, will not be reimbursed. And so the department will write that off once all commitments of the facility are fulfilled. We estimate that to be between $25 and $28 million today. We're continuing to work on the decommissioning cost as well as working with the impacted employees. So we've adjusted both revenue and allocations for the Coleman Bridge going forward. Based on our estimates today, tolls will likely end in early fall of 2025, and we'll announce that date as it becomes closer, and we understand the implications to both the facility, the employees, and the region.
As you will recall, so we were sort of in a conundrum where we owed ourselves some money, 25 to 28 million. Has plenty of cash in it without a lot of need. And to collect that 25 to 28 million dollars was going to take us a number of years of continuing the toll. And more importantly, it was going to take us about $5 or $6 million of reinvestment in the tolling infrastructure. And then we're going to have to recoup that as well. And so it drew us out to many years past this year, and would have the citizens and others paying about 3 times that amount to get that amount paid off over time. And so it just didn't make any sense, frankly. And so we were able to eliminate that by virtue of the General Assembly allowing us to write that money off. And we will take those toll booths down and remove those tolls by the end of this calendar year, and let that bridge be toll-free. So I think it was a great business decision. It's a bit of a nuisance toll, but it also does have an economic impact on the communities on both sides. And so what we're trying to do is free up people's travel and commerce and so forth, and this will be important because frankly, if you're in Gloucester Courthouse area or Gloucester Point area, or you're in Yorktown, the alternative is to go to West Point and drive all the way around, and it's a substantial detour to get there. So this is a great thing, I think, and will help both sides of that water. And it was just a great business decision. Thank you, Ms. Farmer. Yes, sir. Mr. Snap.
Question. I assume that when these tolls go off, then the maintenance of that facility is going to devolve back down to VDOT.
It's being paid through the tolling mechanism. It's always been VDOT's, but yeah, it'll come out, exactly.
The only reason I ask is the previous slide had indicated that the maintenance budget was $18.1 billion over the period of time, and the construction budget was $16.8 billion. And is that the first time that the maintenance budget has construction budget in the 6-year plan?
No, the maintenance budget is always more. The maintenance budget is 51%, and the construction budget is 49%. The problem becomes when we don't meet those numbers, I should say the revenue stream. The problem is when we don't meet those numbers, and we go take from construction and bring to maintenance, and that's the position that we're in. And it's going to get exacerbated even worse
Exactly.
with all this CVTA money, with all the MVTC money, with all the HR TAC money, and with all the 81 money. All that's going in 100% construction. And as I've told you before, the commissioner's been clear about this. This is a looming problem that we will have in Virginia that's going to need to be addressed. And just to sort of put a point on it, as you know, we've told you before that when those tunnels get finished in Hampton Roads and get incorporated in, that's a $40 million a year hit to maintenance that's got to come out of the existing budget. And that's going to be, so all this stuff that we're doing that's coming out of these 100% construction revenue streams are making it much more challenging. And as you have, weather events, you saw we overran our budget by $400 million.
Had to fix it.
And some of that will get reimbursed through FEMA, but a lot of it's snow, right? And nobody's going to send us any money for snow. We just have to do it. So it's a continuing problem. This board will need to grapple with that. Actually, the legislature will need to grapple with that as well in the next numbers of years. But it's coming, and I keep banging the drum because I want to make sure everybody understands what's ahead of us. Thank you, Mr. Stan. Yes, sir, Mr. Fox.
With respect to the tolling, I'm just curious as to why, given the headaches with maintaining all that, why do you wait to the end of the year to stop the tolling?
Takes time. We
To
have
unravel
people,
it.
we have infrastructure, we have some stuff that we need to wind down. So it's, the problem was we were up against the wall on the infrastructure piece. And we had to order it now or it was gonna run out and not work. And so I'm trying to get the governor's team to get this through, the legislature to get this through. But if we didn't go through, we needed to have the new tolling infrastructure. So we were fighting that, but yeah, that's thankfully we were able to do that and mitigate that impact. What else? Ms. Sellers.
There in Gloucester, though, this is probably a really good opportunity for them, because I imagine that goes into people's decision-makings where they locate is, do I have to get to work through a toll bridge?
There's some, and there's some concern, obviously, what happens, and that's a local zoning and a development control thing. Ms. Sellers, I think the toll for a commuter, it's a one-way toll, so you only pay it going one way. And I think the Easy Pass lowest rate was like 40 cents or 50 cents, so it's not a Northern Virginia toll, right? It's not that. It's not a variable, it was not a variable.
Stay in the wheel.
But I'll be clear with you, there were no alternatives. In Northern Virginia, there are alternatives. You can get in the free lanes, you can get in the toll lanes. There were toll-only lanes. That's it. That's the only way you were getting there, was going over a toll bridge, which is sort of the problem we have in Hampton Roads with the Portsmouth, with the Elizabeth River crossings. In many ways, there are functionally no alternatives that are reasonable, depending on where you live. If you live way out, then you do have great alternatives. If you live close to those tunnels, you don't have good alternatives, and you got to pay the toll. So that's part of the difference. Farmer.
Or if I could just follow up on a couple of points to Mr. Stan's question. After the bonds were paid off on the Coleman Bridge in 2021, VDOT began absorbing the bridge maintenance inside of our maintenance funding beginning then to try to decrease the amount of time it took to pay off the remaining commitment to the toll facilities revolving account. And then the Easy Pass rate is 85 cents and the cash rate is $2 on Coleman.
So it's 85 cents, but each way it's in essence 40 cents, right? Thank you, Ms. Farmer, because it's only one way. So if you do a round trip, it's 40 cents each way, 85 cents. Let me also say this. This was expected when it was created to all be gone by now, because there was an expectation that the toll rates were going to go up over time. And so that this, not only the bonds would be paid off, but this loan would be paid off. And we never increased the toll rates. So that's part of the issue that occurred as to why this is still hanging out there. So thankfully, the General Assembly and the governor took care of this, and we're moving on.
We also made some minor updates to 66 inside the Beltway, as well as the express lanes and Hampton Roads over the 6-year period, totaling $68 million in additional anticipated toll revenue. This slide just provides the view of all the revenue sources on a summary table that make up the 6-year financial plan. The green font indicates a change since April. And so many of the adjustments that I've gone through represents the adjustments that have occurred on this table. The slide represents the incorporation of those mainly revenue adjustments and how they impact the allocations across the agency. Again, the green font indicates changes since the April presentation. Slide provides a one-year view of the Commonwealth Transportation Fund budget, and it's one of the budgets you'll be asked to approve later today in the action meeting. With the incorporation of additional funds in the current year, in 2026, the total CTF budget totals $9.6 billion. It represents a decrease of 4.3% from the 2025 budget, and just provides a view of the makeup of those fund sources. This slide provides the allocation makeup of the 2026 budget recommendations. Highway maintenance, including both VDOT maintained as well as locally maintained, represents about 32% of the budget. The construction is right at 30%, and rail and public transportation is 10%. In terms of the VDOT budget highlights, our total budget net of the regional revenues is $7.3 billion with a grand total of $8.3 billion. We've talked about crossover a lot over the years. The commitment related to that expected deficit is $816.9 million, made up of $284 million of federal funds and $532.6 million of state funds that come from the construction fund. This table just provides a reference point of crossover over the last 4 years and the recommendations for 2026. We infused more federal to implement IIJA in 2023, which is why the state crossover was reduced in 2023, but otherwise it stayed on a similar trend.
So I think it's important to sort of double down on that. That was, if you will, one-time money. And so it skews the crossover impact. So don't be confused by that, right? As Laura said, the IIJ money gave us almost $530 million that masked our Virginia problem.
This table provides an update on the programmatic allocations that are outlined in the VDOT budget for your consideration. The VDOT budget document has a lot of details about these program areas and what's included in the funding amounts. The green font, again, indicates changes since the considered budget in April. We made small changes between environmental and planning, where we had a need in land use and implementation of agency budgets and a surplus in our environmental area. And so we've made one transfer that nets to zero between environmental and planning. Otherwise, the changes represented on this slide are implementing the revenue adjustments that I've talked about already today.
Chairman, I have a question.
Ms. Sellers.
The highway safety maintenance, is the increase due to new facilities being brought on board, requiring new maintenance, or is that due to inflation or the 145? I think that's what it is.
145.1.
Yes, ma'am. So in January, when we presented the first draft of the assumptions for fiscal year 2026, we talked about additional investments in both VDOT maintenance and the payments to the city streets. And we also talked about the incorporation of bringing the tunnel online over the 6-year period. And so in 2026, we're adding an additional $359 million above what the programmatic amounts are in those recommendations. And then with the adjustments over the 6-year period, $1.2 billion. And we talked about that in January, and that led into what was available for Smart Scale as a result of those adjustments. So with that, the 2026 budgets for the CTF, VDOT, and DRPT will be presented for your action today.
Are there any questions? Ms. Lawson.
Just briefly, slide 3. I'm curious, why is the estimates for aviation fuel tax flat over the entire 6 years?
I need to get back to you on the sources. It has been $2 million for my entire career at the department, so I think it's a commitment.
Ever fluctuates or,
No, no, but I will get back to you on the details of that estimate.
okay.
Good question. I don't know the answer either.
Thinking of numerous airports in the valley that are growing and trying to increase fuel sales, and I think they're having success at that. That just kind of throws me.
We'll look at it. Good question. Anybody else? Thank you, Ms. Farmer. Appreciate it. I think we're going to take a 10-minute break. To order. This is the workshop meeting of the Commonwealth Transportation Board. We're at item number 6 on our agenda, the FY 2026 Budget and 6-Year Improvement Program for the Virginia Department of Rail and Public Transportation, Ms. Deanna Awary. Welcome. Hope you're well.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Secretary, CTB board members. I am the Chief Financial Officer for the Department of Rail and Public Transportation, and here to give an update on the FY26 budget and the 6-year improvement plan for transportation and rail projects. So I always like to start off with just a brief timeline for the 6-year improvement program, the fiscal 26 through 31 time cycle, and we began back in November of 24, where we held workshops for our grantees, our rail and transit grantees, and then between December 1 of 24 and February 1st of 25, we accepted grant applications. We have a phenomenal team in Richmond and in Nova that reviewed applications between February and March, and then we and my team and my colleagues brought back the 6-year improvement plan, a draft of it, to this board in April of a few months ago, actually. Then we held public hearings, and then I'm here today to present the final SIP to the board. Okay. So reasons that we've updated the SIP between now and April, we've had some changes. Some of them are due to the changes that happened with the budget bill, HB 1600, Chapter 725. I believe Laura mentioned this as well, so I'll just comment very briefly. Originally, there was a general fund appropriation in the biennial budget for WMATA. The total was $144.7 million. The amended bill reduced the biennial appropriation to $136.9 million, and we plan on dispersing $77.2 million of that in fiscal 26. So that's a change that's reflected, and my next slides will kind of highlight those major changes. We also had a change in that in April, we didn't have our full year federal dollars, our full federal apportionment tables. They were released between April and now, and so we've updated those numbers and the allocations associated with those projects. We've also had some smaller program and project adjustments that I'll highlight in the upcoming slides. And then we do receive final information from the MPOs, which are the Metropolitan Planning Organizations. They prioritize projects. We work with VDOT and our transit partners to update those allocations and the funding associated with the transit projects for Federal Highway and the associated state match coming from the Transportation Trust Fund. Okay, so here are the details at a high level by program area. And so the first one that you'll notice is the statewide capital assistance merit. This is from our Commonwealth Mass Transit allocation. For this particular program, it was just a funding shift. Originally, we had a project that was funded with CMTF money, Commonwealth Mass Transit. We have so many acronyms, so I'll try to be mindful of those. We switched the funding to a federal grant, and so that's why there's a reduction there. With the special programs in our transit ridership incentive program, TRIP, there were some smaller programmatic adjustments. Some projects came in under budget. Some requested a little more additional support. Some we removed. In total, there was a net impact of $500,000 for both of those programs. I highlighted the WMATA General Fund piece. That's showing on the assistance there, on the WMATA assistance line there. And again, all of that is related to the general fund dollars. None of it is related to Commonwealth Mass Transit. It's all general fund. Continuing on with other public transit investments and some changes, we had about 4 projects that were added to the pool for I-66 outside the Beltway program, and so those projects were added, increasing that total for that line. I mentioned the state match in federal highway and the CMAQ, RSTP, CRP. There were changes driven by the transit agencies and the MPOs, and that's why those lines were adjusted. And then the FTA grants line was the one where I mentioned there was a funding source shift from CMTF to the federal line. For our rail program in DRPT, there were no changes from what we presented in April. The only change came from the VPRA Transforming Rail in Virginia. There was an increase in fiscal 26 of about 13.5 million, and they increased the I-66 inside the Beltway funding. And this last slide just shows a very high-level total of where we were last June, so June of '24, what the total SIP was. It was 6.5 billion over those 6 years, and where we are today in final, which is 7.1 billion. So between last June and this June, we are investing about 555 million more in rail, public transit and rail projects. And between the draft and final, it's about a $98 million difference, and I highlighted those in the previous slide. So those are the changes between April and now. So the other part of this presentation is to just highlight major changes from our budget that we presented in April. And so, excuse me, in fiscal 26, we plan on investing about $1.25 billion in state, federal, and local resources for public transportation and rail projects across Virginia. This is, when we talk at budget, when we think about budget, we're looking at a budget on a cash flow basis. So we're talking about what we expect to spend or, pay out over the next fiscal year. So from July 1 to June 30th of 26, these are our projected expenditures. For transit, the budget is a little over $1 billion. There was an $11.1 million decrease from the presentation that I did in April, and that was driven by the WMATA General Fund piece, but also we adjusted our capital expenditures down slightly between now and then. There were no changes for the rail budget, the VPRA portion, nor the DRPT admin budget, and I'll show you where those numbers are. These are the basic high-level numbers, the numeric values for the 2026 budget for the agency. So again, the only real change was related to the transit piece, and that's driven by WMATA and fewer capital expenditures. This is just a quick bar or pie graph showing the sources. Oh, sorry. Something's happening with the remote. Just a quick pie chart showing the sources of funding for fiscal 26. This is how we plan on paying for the expenditures that we will incur over the next fiscal year. And then in terms of our next steps, once the CTB takes action today, the SIP will be accessible on our website. You also have it, I think, in your board packets, but the website is much more user-friendly. You're able to search up grants by recipient, by district, by organization type, so it's a lot more user-friendly. But that's all I have. If you have any questions, happy to answer them.
So like the governor, everybody ought to, on Saturday morning, you ought to get up and dive into this and get in some stats. The governor loves to do that, and then you get lots of questions after that happens. He's a stat-oriented guy. Are there any questions? Let me just say a couple things, and maybe the director might want to pile on. She was just in a SJ 28 committee meeting yesterday, which is a joint committee that's been created, or joint group that's been created, to sort of look at WMATA and try to figure that thing out, if you will. That's sort of a glossing over it. But at the end of the day, what they're really looking at is revenue streams, new revenue streams to fund WMATA. And all you have to do is sort of look at the transit budgets that you just looked at and sort of look at WMATA's piece of that. And obviously, it is the transit system in Virginia. It's the king or queen or whatever you want to call it of transit in Virginia. And there's so much more transit in Northern Virginia than there is anywhere else, that most of the transit money tends to flow there. And listen, WMATA, representing Metro and the bus services up there, is incredibly important to that region's economy and thus to Virginia. But it's a complicated beast. And, you know, we've been working hard to try to get that board and the staff to find ways to reduce the need for revenue. But I don't think we're there. And frankly, it's just, they're just looking for hundreds and hundreds of more millions of dollars a year to feed the beast. And I'm not sure they're going to find that, certainly. And it's sort of interesting. I think Virginia's more poised to do that than Washington, D.C. or Maryland, sort of the transit, the people you'd expect to do it. Part of that is because Maryland and D.C. don't have the revenue, and they're already struggling mightily just to do what they're doing. And so a sort of a continuing challenge going forward. It's not going to get resolved anytime soon, in my view. But there really needs to be some serious look of, can you afford it? At what level can you afford this going forward? And what needs to change? And, yeah, I think we need to think about things a little differently than we have. But you will struggle with that here. The General Assembly will struggle with that here in the years to come. And I'm just telling you, if you don't find a way, it will eat every dollar you give it. That's what it will do. We build immense stations that are beautiful. We want all the amenities. We want this and we want that. And listen, that's all good stuff, but somebody's got to pay for it. And we want more service, not less service. We want it to go more places, not less places. Right now, we're just clear path forward on what should happen there. But unfortunately, a lot of the view is just give us more money. So go find new revenue streams and give us more money. That's sort of the world we live in there. So lots of challenges, great, important system, but it has an insatiable appetite for dollars. And some of it's labor, frankly. The labor piece of this is challenging. And it's challenging because of many reasons, but that's a big piece of it. Director, any comments?
Sure. Thank you, Secretary. It was an eye-opening meeting yesterday with the Joint Subcommittee, and the one thing I will say is the legislature tasked this Joint Subcommittee with looking at all these new revenue streams, but the Commonwealth is, through DRPT, is funding an operational efficiency study that is ongoing, and in the September SJ 28 meeting, they are planning to speak more about possible cost savings and efficiencies. So I really look forward to that. They talked a lot yesterday about train automation and the savings that would produce, but when I asked what the dollar figure was on that savings, they don't have that ready. And we hope to hear more about that in the September meeting. So we'll wait for that and follow up once we get that information.
As part of our negotiate, what the director's referencing, as part of our negotiations to continue to fund the deficits there, was to provide some money that we would help sort of direct some additional studies into how to save some money there. And so that's what's going on. But it's a very complicated beast. There are lots of tentacles and of this thing. There's lots of entities that are involved in it. And it's a complicated governance structure as well. And so we don't really give most of our money to WMATA. We really give it to MVTC. And then we sort of got to work through that. And MVTC's holding some money that, you know, we sort of fought through some of that. But I think what I would tell you is that I don't see, and it's interesting, Director, the first thing we're studying is where can we go find more money? Then we're going to study how can we reduce the money that we need. So that's the order that we're going in, okay? But at the end of the day, what we sort of say to each other, and I've had these discussions with my counterparts in the other jurisdictions, meaning the other sovereign jurisdictions of Maryland and DC, there is no money, and they're not looking to go find new revenue streams in those places. They're just not. Certainly not some of the ones that have been suggested. So we are blessed for, in Virginia, to have a roaring economy where we've given back $9 billion to the citizens while still making record investments in education and social services and on and on and on and on. And people are moving from Maryland and DC to Virginia and from other places. First time in a long time we've had in-migration. And as I told you, when we spent some time with some business leaders in Europe, people are just talking about Virginia and talking about what's going on there, and they want to be here. And it's because of these things that have occurred here in Virginia. It's the same thing that's going on at Route 211, or excuse me, Exit 211 in New Kent. And so Virginia's just in a really good place. And I hope we will keep that going for years and decades to come. But this is a particularly challenging beast. It's very important, and we need to figure it out. And so you guys and ladies will continue to have to grapple with that over the next numbers of years. Mr. Gribben. Just hit the button, the people button, see if it comes on.
I can just speak loudly. We're not alone in terms of jurisdictions that are looking to solve transit. Of autonomous vehicles, Waymo has now got a vehicle out. Currently, we have as a matter of law, regulation, policy.
Let me speak to, because you're getting out of the transit into the road space. So yes, in fact, we have a committee that's being formed of my office and some legislators and others to look at autonomous vehicle regulations. That's coming together as we speak. And so we'll look at that. And I think just sort of big picture here, Mr. Gribben, and you and I both know this, and I've been saying this for 4 years, 3.5 years now. It's not going to be like this 30, 40, 50, 60 years from now, folks. It's just not, right? I mean, to your point, there are already cars that are driving by themselves, right? There are already trucks that are driving by themselves. And at some point, when we get enough of that, we will have a radically different situation on our highways. And you will just get in you will get in a pod, you'll get in something, and you'll tell it where you want it to go, and it'll take you there. And it'll talk to all the other vehicles. It will know where everybody is. It will be so much safer. The throughput will explode in terms of what it will be able to accomplish. And, is that like a bunch of mini transit things in a way, right? So to your point, you could sleep, you could work, you can eat dinner, you can do whatever you want, and you're just going to get to where you need to go. So, and I've said this before, and I don't want to drone on, but as we do these toll deals, right, these public partnerships that are 50 and 60 years long, and I'm thinking like, wow, I don't think they're going to be driving their car through the toll gantry the same way. I think it's going to be very different. So I think technology is a big piece of the answer here in terms of being able to move around. So I can't specifically tell you about the regulation stuff, but obviously we're moving in that direction. And I don't know how many years till we're fully connected. How many years, Deputy Commissioner? You're in this space.
It's been the next 5 years for the last 25. But we're close. We're really, really close.
So do you not think that in 40 years?
Oh, it's transformed by then.
That's my point.
Yeah.
So whether it's 20, or whether it's 30, or whether it's 18, it's happening. It's gonna happen.
But as you think about transit, I mean, now there's the opportunity for you to get in a pod and take a nap while you get to work. The opportunity for you to get in a pod and it picks 6 or 7 other people up that are all going to the same destination, and you start thinking about the network.
You're doing the slug thing, sort of, right?
Yeah, but automated.
Yes.
Right? I mean, it'll come to your door and pick you up because it
Exactly.
knows that someone 4 doors down is also going in a similar direction and drop you off. I mean, we can't even envision the network implications, but part of what I think we can do is start thinking about, is there anything in our current structure that inhibits that or impedes that type of innovation? Because at the end of the day, I think I may kind of agree with you if this is what you were saying, just throwing more money at the problem is not going to fix it.
I would wish, which is extremely unlikely, that I would be here 40 years from now to see that. But, who would have said 15 years ago that you could pick up your phone and say, type me a 10-page speech that focuses on these 4 things with this overarching theme, and push a button, and in 12 seconds, you got a 10-page speech that you read and say, wow, who could have imagined that? I mean, it's just where we are, and that's just like the tip of the iceberg. When you go talking to these folks we've been talking to as we've been on this trade mission, and some of these people that are deep into technology, it's like, wow, it's amazing. I digress, Ms. Rawari, I apologize. Any other questions? Yes, Ms. Dunlop.
Yes, Mr. Secretary and Madam Director, who has a lot of experience from Maryland also, I'm just wondering what your thoughts are with respect to, are we at a tipping point with WMATA? I mean, what happens? What do we foresee in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years? Because, I mean, this is a crisis. Maryland has no money. DC has no money. Virginia is prospering, but is there the stomach for, putting a bunch more money into this? I mean, you're looking at this and you're transportation experts. What do we see in the next 3 or 4 or 5 years on this?
I see retirement. That's what I see. It's going to come to a head, right? If everybody has money and everybody's willing to go, then that's one thing. If only one person has money and so the other 2 aren't willing to go, that's a whole different matter. And what's the federal role here? Listen, this thing was built and designed to bring workers from the suburbs to DC for the federal government. That's what it was designed for, right? And so where's the feds in this responsibility? And obviously when the COVID thing hit and the federal workers went home, had a big impact. That's not its only problem, though. I mean, it's not just that. And so a lot of them are back now. We've seen that in all of our systems. Transit's back in Northern Virginia in general. VRE's has still got some ways to go, but they're doing well, much better. So they've rebounded a bunch. So, there's going to be a forcing function, because at the end of the day, how much money is the rest of the Commonwealth going to be willing to spend on that? And yet it's really important, right? It's an important thing. So I think it will get, by force, if you will, there'll be a forcing function and it'll have to get relooked at. It'll have to either be reshaped, have to be reduced. I mean, part of the frustration here is we're fighting for dollars and sort of arguing about that going forward. We got the board trying to expand service. I'm like, no. I mean, I get your desire, but the transit world sort of starts like this, right? This is how I see it. We want more service, and we don't want anybody to have to pay a fare. That's sort of where you start, right? That's sort of the big picture view is more service, but no one should pay a fare. And, that's okay. It doesn't make you a bad person if you believe in that. I'd like to have more service too, and I'd like for nobody to pay, for just to work, but that's not the way it does work. And so, there's going to have to be some shared pain. And listen, government's not responsible to give everybody everything that they need and want. It's not their role. Sometimes you got to figure that out yourself, and you got to make it work. And we're there to sort of fill in the holes and to have the system, but we don't have the revenue. I mean, you saw the crossover number, $500 million. That's going to grow. And so where does the money come from? And we don't in Virginia in this administration believe that we should just continue to get in your pocket because we know the effect of that. We know at the end of the day, that's not how it's going to make us prosper if we just tax you to death. And so it'll come to an head because the money will run out. That's what will happen. And they'll have to do something. And we tried to sort of force that earlier, but we weren't able to get there. And so we had a couple of years of that feeding that's on the books, and we'll see what Maryland and DC and the rest of the group does. But so we got two organizations working hard on this. They're good people that are trying to do good stuff. The Joint Subcommittee, and then there's a DMV Moves group, non-governmental group. But that's where we are. So at the end of the day, when the money runs out, that's when somebody's going to have to get real.
Secretary.
Doc Smoot.
I might add that I continue to read about this challenge, and the more I read, the more I find it is not unique to Virginia, Maryland, and DC. One need look any farther away than Philadelphia, where there is a massive financial issue on mass transit. They're forecasting a 47% reduction in service starting next year, unless Pennsylvania appropriates a lot more money to bail them out, which, at least as of my last reading, it has not chosen so to do. So this is not a unique problem. And I fully agree with your view that just throwing more money at it is unlikely to solve it. I do think that as a national capital region, we have to offer a substantial level of service that will reflect well on those coming to our country. We cannot afford to be offering a miserable transit system, but more money is probably not a major part of the future solution.
I'll just say again, listen, Northern Virginia has been the economic engine in many respects for Virginia. I mean, just the GDP in that region is huge, right? And we need to serve the region, and transit's an important part of that. We just need to get it right, and it can't be all things to all people, and there's only so much money that could be spent. And that's what we've got to come to grips with. So, yes, it's not unique. This is across the country. Labor's a piece of this. We fight that battle all day long on some of the rules and regs, and, you know, it's just, I tell you, I ran into a guy, this was interesting. I ran into a driver for Metro up in Northern Virginia. I was in a place we stopped to get a sandwich on the way home on Route 1. And he had the Metro thing on. Good-looking man, probably 50-some years old. Uniform looked good. The guy looked, you know, he was impressive. And I asked him about Metro and this and that. And his comment was, he was frustrated, basically, and I won't tell you exactly what he said, but he was frustrated and basically said, you know, people just get on the bus and don't pay, and there's nothing you can do, and they just do what they want to do, and I just have to deal with it, right? And he was frustrated. This is an African-American guy, probably 55, 60 years old, been with Metro for a while, and he was just over it. He was over the behavior of the people. He was over them not paying. He couldn't do anything about it, and it just was driving him nuts. And, you know, there's just too much of that. And then there, you know, and this isn't a WMATA problem necessarily, but we all know there's too much transit that's inefficient. And we're all for transit. I just want it to be efficient so we can have more of it at less cost and serve more people. That's what we're trying to do here. And so if you see a 55-passenger bus rolling around with an average 6 people on it, there's a problem there. Nobody would do that, right? Nobody in the private sector would do that. They'd find an alternative. That's what they would do. And we need to force that to happen. And it just doesn't happen organically. It happens when the money runs out. That's when it happens. And we're trying to get ahead of that, right? And that's not necessarily a WMATA problem, you know, but the fare problem is real. And you look at some of the places on Metro, that nobody pays. I mean, it's like 92% fare evasion. Like, why even have the fare box? I mean, then we put in $15,000 fare boxes to update them on each bus. It was 20 grand a fare box. And nobody uses them, so why just take them out? I mean, that's sort of what you get into, and I don't want to go down the rabbit hole on all this, but listen, at the end of the day, WMATA is very important. We need to find a way for it to go forward. Its appetite is voracious and is unsustainable, and we will hit the wall, and something will have to happen. Ms. Sellers.
Just to add to it, and especially in the southern and the western suburbs of Northern Virginia, there's been a lot of investment in alternatives with PRTC expanding, the Loudon bus system expanding, and those are not empty buses. Those are filled to capacity in the routes that they run. And 10 years ago, even, WMATA was the only show in town, unless you were slugging, particularly coming from, you know, the southern 95 suburbs. And it used to be we would hear Woodbridge saying, please give us a train, a Metro stop. We don't hear that as much anymore. Now VRE is getting better. They're getting ready to open the Potomac Shores station. And again, PRTC's made a ton of investment. And so that can't go without saying that the suburbs and some of these other organizations are filling gaps.
That's great. It's fantastic. And let me be clear. When I'm talking about that ridership and the percentages, in Northern Virginia is a different place. They have a much better utilization rate. But in other places, we do not, right? And I want us to have a good one everywhere. Okay. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Thank you, Ms. O'Leary. The next item on the agenda is item number 7, FY 2026-31, 6-year improvement program. Ms. Kimberly Pryor is back. Welcome back.
Thank you. I'm playing cleanup on presentations on budgets and 6-year programs, so there's not a lot of exciting new information in my slide deck, probably. The FY
We're on the edge of our seats.
I know, me too. The final FY 26 to 2031 6-year improvement program is valued at $26.7 billion. This is a slight increase of just under $1 billion over the draft. The construction program also includes about $763 million for debt service and supports about 4,500 projects. The current program also includes about $2.8 billion to be provided by others. As with the draft, the final 6-year improvement program incorporates assumptions in the final 26 to 31 6-year financial plan, as Ms. Farmer described. This includes planning for the operational needs of the HRBT expansion, as well as ongoing base adjustments beginning in FY27 and beyond for VDOT maintenance activities, as well as financial assistance to localities. We're also including $300 million in Garvey bonds, $1 million in each fiscal year for 27, 29, and 31, as well as the estimated debt service allocated for that. And those Garvey bonds are allocated to a balance entry at this point in time. Continuing on with just some base assumptions for the program, revenue sharing remains at a state share of $100 million annually. The ITTF program is at $25 million annually, which is the maximum amount permitted in the code. The same with the unpaved roads program, which is a carve-out of the construction district grant program at $25 million annually. We've also incorporated the passage of SB 1082, which authorized the issuance of bonds in the special structures program. And finally, we updated distribution percentages related to state of good repair to reflect the new eligibility of cusp structures. We held public meetings in April and May around the state. We made some additional adjustments based on the Smart Scale Round 6 consensus scenario approved by this board last month. We incorporated some revised federal assumptions. As with the DRPT program, we got updated federal numbers, and so that led to a slight uptick in some of our federal apportionment and revenues. And then we also included $175 million that was approved in the budget of general fund money for the I-81 program. This slide just shows the impact to the core programs in the 6-year improvement program. The green indicates a change from the draft. You can see just a very slight uptick in our federal programs and in our 5 formula programs, notably the Highway Safety Improvement Program, Regional Surface Transportation, and CMAQ. Similarly, on this slide, slight uptick in the IOEP program and the TAP program. You'll be presented with an action item later today to approve the FY26 to 2031 6-year improvement program. And I'd be happy to take any questions if you have any.
Questions? Mr. Griffin?
Thank you for the presentation. Question about debt and how we think about debt. To be honest with you, I was a little surprised when I first started that the Commonwealth had as much debt as it has. I think we saw our debt service at around $400 million a year, like $2.6 billion over the 6 years. With new Garvey bonds coming on board, that's additional debt incurrence. How do we think about when to incur debt and when not to incur debt? I mean, I realize from an operational standpoint, if you're building a project, you want to avoid mobilizing and demobilizing and ranking, kind of racking up huge costs, very inefficient, more efficient to borrow and then do it all at one shot. But I'm just curious as to what is our process of deciding, okay, this project or this series of projects warrants taking out debt versus we'll delay them or we'll do something else and not incur debt for kind of future generations.
Sure, and I'm going to let Ms. Farmer take that one.
Mr. Griffin, the programs that are supported by debt have very unique revenue streams and authorizations from the General Assembly to deliver projects with the use of debt. The Garvey allocations that were programmed were a recommendation from the fall to put in a placeholder to begin incorporating Garveys and potentially future projects for those that are eligible for Smart Scale or those that are eligible for our interstate program. And so that'll be a future direction that comes from this board, probably from recommendations from the administration or the department in terms of projects that need debt to move forward. And obviously, They are not sources. When we set aside an allocation for Garvey bonds, we are set aside the corresponding federal revenue to support that debt service. And so if we choose not to exercise the debt, we'll release those federal allocations in a future program update.
I guess it's sort of in a way of saying, we don't take a lot of risk there. And at the end of the day, when you have the debt rating and the debt, the interest cost that we have, or the interest rate that we have on one side, and on the other side, you have inflation that's substantially in excess of that, and you don't get the benefit, the intrinsic benefit of the project. When you do that math, and you're not really taking risk because it's all based on a revenue stream that's just going to fund it, then, you know, I'm more, let's do more than less, because it's cheaper in that regard without question, and we deliver the project earlier.
I'm just saying, I think in the future, as we do that, it would be helpful, at least to me, to see some of that math. Like, hey, we're borrowing in this circumstance because interest rates are at 7% and inflation is going to run at 12, or again, demobilization, mobilization, or whatever that benefit is.
And the cost of not doing the project.
Yeah.
The impact of that. So we're a fairly conservative organization, sir. What else? Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is item number 8. It's the 2026 federal safety targets. And Ms. Margie Ray is here with us today to talk safety and targets. Thank you, Ms. Ray. Welcome. Hope you're doing well.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Secretary. Members of the board, good morning. Today, I am going to talk and present information about federally required safety targets. But before I get started, I want to introduce two people. One, we have today with us Brandy Brubaker. She is from DMV. She's the Director of the Highway Safety Strategy for the Virginia Highway Safety Office. And then secondly is Stephen Reed. He is with our VDOT's Traffic Operations Division, and he's the State Highway Safety Engineer.
Stephen, stand up. There's Stephen. There's Brandy. Thank you.
So some of this, it may be new for a few of you all. Several of you all have heard from me because it's an annual presentation that I've been giving for a while now. So we'll start out with a little bit of background. Why are we doing some of what we're doing? Also, some of the approaches that we consider in looking how we set targets, and then proposing those to you with action next month for adoption of those federal safety targets. So the Code of Virginia says that you, as the Commonwealth Transportation Board, need to establish the performance targets for surface transportation. That's why I'm before you today. But the federal law also requires performance targets for safety, and there are 5 measures that we have to look at. The safety targets are established annually for the next calendar year, so we're looking at setting targets for 2026. Both VDOT and Department of Motor Vehicles, the Highway Safety Office, have to coordinate on 3 of those 5 measures, whereby the targets actually have to be the same. DMV reports August 1st to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and VDOT submits a report later in August to the Federal Highway Administration. Those schedules kind of drive when we present information to you. So, So these are the 5 measures that we have to look at: the number of fatalities, the rate, which is based on a per 100 million vehicle miles traveled, the number of serious injuries, the rate of serious injuries, and the number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. So those are bicyclists and pedestrians. These are for all public roads. The first 3 measures with the asterisks are the ones that we share between VDOT and DMV. So some additional background. The requirements for the federal target setting have been in place for a number of years. We first started setting targets back for 2018. But back in 21, with the bipartisan infrastructure law, they created some new requirements that said that your state safety targets have to be set to demonstrate level or improved performance for those 3 common measures of fatalities, fatality rate, and serious injuries. With this annual reporting requirement, though, that VDOT and DMV do, they submit both an annual target as well as a 5-year average target, and that's a rolling 5-year average. So when we look at kind of the bottom half of the slide, the 2026 5-year average target for each of these measures are averaged with 4 preceding years of data from the 26 target, and then that has to be compared to a baseline of the most recent 5-year average. So that baseline is based on actual performance values from 2020 through 2024. And then the 2026 5-year average target is actually 3 years of performance data that is from 2022 to 24, along with our projections for 25 and that proposed target for 2026. And so I think, first of all, this chart will kind of help demonstrate what I just presented to you all. But here gives us 20 years, basically, of historical data so we can see what's happening with our fatalities and serious injuries. So we can see that we had a high of fatalities in 2022, and we've started to decline from that, but we're not back to pre-pandemic levels, but heading that way. Our serious injuries have declined in kind of a bouncing around a little bit, but somewhat flattened out. The box over to the right is the basis of the 5-year average that I talked about, that the baseline conditions. So when we look at the average of 932.4, it's the 5 numbers above it that are averaged over the 5-year period to get to that baseline condition. Okay. So now we look at the rate measure. And so again, this is just applying to those count values on the prior slide, the VMT calculation. And we can see what's happening with our rates for our fatalities and serious injuries. Similar trends. These are aligning with what we see for national numbers as well, so Virginia's kind of tracking along with that. And we also have this slide here for our fatalities and serious injuries for our bicyclists and pedestrians. And we can see that we had a low of 609 back during the pandemic. And then we increased back to closer to pre-pandemic levels. And these numbers being comprised of both fatalities and serious injuries, we really saw a reduction in pedestrian fatalities in 23 and 24, but the serious injuries increased enough that it kind of kept it level. So that's what we see with that data. So that's kind of where we've been. We also wanted to look at where do we think we are in 2025, because we don't have a value for that right now. So what you see in the first column there is the actual values that we have for 2024. Last year, you all adopted targets for 2025, and that's what's represented in the second column. And then the final column is where are we year to date for 2025, and then prorating that out through the full year and projecting where we'll be at the end of 2025. So if this holds true, we do see a decline in the performance from our 2024 performance. So I think this just gives us some context that right now things are looking pretty good. We are seeing reductions across the board. Some of our targets last year may have been a little aggressive, optimistic. So given all that context, we started looking at how do we want to set our targets moving forward. The first approach that we looked at is using an analytical model that we've used in the past. We started using that for our 2020 targets. We've used that every year up until last year when we had the new requirement of having to be level or declining performance. And we found that some of our model projections, the annual value for whatever the target year was, made us exceed the 5-year average, so we could not use that value. So then we also looked at the approach of what are the values that are needed for 2025 and 2026 that would give us a 5-year average that is improving or declining. And I will give a little more context for each of these approaches. So with the model, we calculate the predicted fatalities and serious injuries and project out what will happen. That model is a statistical model that includes a lot of external influencing factors. We update it each year. We look at some other data sources to see if there's other data that we can bring into the model that may improve our understanding of what's happening on the roads. And, but from the results of that model, we get a baseline projection for 2026. At the same time, we also have projects. The model only goes through data for 2024 and then makes assumptions for projections, right? So with that baseline condition, we want to understand what's happening now that's being built with an expected benefit that could help reduce that projection. So we estimate the benefits from smart scale and highway safety improvement projects that were recently completed or will be completed during that performance period, and we subtract that from the model prediction. And so that's how we get to our expected performance. We just calculate the rate measures from those count measures using the expected VMT growth. So that's the other approach then, is if our model doesn't work for us, what's the second way we want to do it? We looked at various alternatives here, and what we've presenting to you today is kind of an approach where we're going to go ahead and use, we don't know 25 and we don't know 26. 2025, we want to use the adopted targets that you adopted last year for 25, and then we'll set that 2026 value level to what we project for 2025. And I'll talk a little bit more about some of that logic. So we have charts here to kind of demonstrate some of this. Across the top and the left are our annual values, and then the 5-year averages to the right. But we can see that starting with the 5-year average, we have the value of 932.4. That's the baseline number that we have to meet to be level or improving from. So when we go look at the model predictions, and we played with some scenarios, this was one that we felt moved forward well, but that value, when it's included in there, we don't have a level or improving 5-year average. So that doesn't really work for us. So then you go to the second approach. And on the bottom left box, the value of 819 in green, that's the value that was adopted as part of the 2025 target setting practice. And then we, again, did like just a math calculation. What does it give us to get to a level performance? And some of those values seemed a little optimistic as well, or unrealistic, and especially given what our 2025 projections are. So what we're proposing is that we would use the 2025 projections for our 2026 targets. And with that, of the 882, that matches the table you saw a few charts ago, slides ago. That 882 combined with the 819 gives us a declining or improving 5-year average moving forward. Okay. So same here, again, it's just a math exercise where we apply the VMT to the count measures from the prior slide. And again, we show that our 5-year average is improving. And that rate of 1 for 2026 as the proposed target is the projection from our 2025 data. Same exercise for serious injuries. We actually see that the model is projecting an increase. Our projected data for 2025 shows that we seem to be doing much better in this area. So using our target in the bottom left from last year, 6,829, and using the projected 2025 performance of 6,424, we get to a 5-year average that is also improving. So with our rate measure, again, it's math. We're applying the VMT to the count measures that were identified on the prior chart, and results in a declining performance value for our 5-year average. Same exercise then for our non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. We actually, with the model projections, did see a decline in performance, an improvement in performance, but our 5-year average doesn't give us a level or declining improved performance. So we still went with the same approach from the prior measures, where we looked at using the target that was set in 2025 of 619, and then the projection for 2025 of 604 to get to our 5-year average. So this table summarizes the recommended approach and the target for 2026. The first 3 columns of the 2024 actual, 2025 target, and the 2025 projected all were in that table presented previously. We've added to this the proposed 2026 values, and then just give you a sense of the change in performance from that's the comparison of the proposed target for 2026 to the actual value of 2024, and just shows that the approach that we're using for the federal 5-year average results in an improving trend. And last slide here is next steps would be next month, having you adopt these targets at the July meeting.
After lunch, we're going to have a quiz on all this, and you're going to explain it in detail. There'll be very specific questions. Let me just, thanks, Margie. Let me just say this. None of this has anything to do with what we do, in terms of action, right? Because we just want the number to be as low as we can make it. And we're not going to stop if we're under the target. I hate using the word target. We for 15 years, we've debated whether it should be a target. It used to be a goal. Like, oh my goodness, how can you have a goal like that? I prefer the word projection because it doesn't sort of qualify it. It just is what it is. But nothing that we do at this board should be impacted by any of this. We ought to be trying to drive that number as low as we can. But there are federal rules and there are federal requirements, and they put us in this process. All I'm saying is whether it's 900 or 800, it's too many, right? And the federal government has they have a Vision Zero thing, and I've sort of, I'm not the biggest fan of targets you can't get to, and you can't get to those. Maybe if Mr. Gribben's vision comes true, we can get to those. But in the meantime, we're not getting there, and so, you know, what should that number be? All I'm saying is this is important, particularly to see where we are and how we're trending, right? But we should be putting huge attention and doing everything we can do to drive these numbers down, right? And there's lots of things outside our control. And the Shep Miller School of Anecdotal Information would say this is not a design and engineering problem. Cars are getting safer, by the way. You know, when we were traveling, some of the vans we were in, or minivans or whatever they are, have this, you know, the total collision avoidance thing, and you're backing up, and it sees something it doesn't like, and it slams on the brakes, you know, but there's nothing I need to slam on the brakes for, right? But all those things will help. At the same time, we're introducing and pushing societally all sorts of new modes of transportation and old modes of transportation into dangerous areas, whether it's a skateboard, a lime scooter, a bike, a pedestrian, or whatever. Vulnerable users, we're pushing them into these congested situations. So that's has the other impact. But at the end of the day, we're trying to meet our federal requirements and do this in a real way, but it really shouldn't change how we look at this, because we want that number to not be 912 versus 923. We want it to be 400 or 300. Or really, we want it to be zero. And so as we program what we do otherwise, this does not impact that. We should still do whatever we can do programmatically. This is sort of an accounting function, if you will. And I would tell you that my anecdotal school tells me that a lot of this is behavior versus what I'll call anti-behavior. And anti-behavior is enforcement, right? So I think our behavior has gotten worse, and I think our enforcement has gotten less. And so those two things don't bode well for this. And I think we need to keep beating on that and beating on that and beating on that. We need to find, we need to up enforcement. Now, I will tell you there's a great push and pull and a great debate in the automated enforcement world. We're going to see some of that in New Kent. So New Kent, big work zone, right? And in work zones in Virginia, we can have automated enforcement, and it's going to get announced. New Kent's going to put some automated enforcement on the interstate in the Gap. It's a variable speed limit there that goes from 70 during non-working time to 60 during working time, meaning when the contractors are working. But there's going to be some additional enforcement. And you know, we struggle between the sort of big brother concern where somebody's watching everything that you do versus 900 people being killed on the highways because people are doing dumb stuff. And we all know that a lot of places, I mean, people are driving 10 and 15 miles over the speed limit regularly. Everybody is. Like, and it's just, and the people that don't, they're causing the problem, if you will. I mean, they're not, but they are. Because so many people are going over the speed limit, but the ones that are driving the speed limit are, you know, are the disruption. So something's got to give here, folks. And I just think we have to be more accountable. We have to hold ourselves more accountable. We need more enforcement, and that's inching us into more automated enforcement. And as I've said, for me personally, if you're not doing anything wrong, you shouldn't worry about it, right? I don't get real exercise, and I wasn't always the driver who didn't get tickets, because I used to get them when I was young. And enforcement and the insurance industry convinced me that I shouldn't do that anymore. And so I stopped doing it, right? But if they hadn't have done that, I probably would have not changed that behavior necessarily, or certainly wouldn't have done it as quickly as I did. So we got to find a way to fix this problem. And I'm just a simple guy, but it seems to me that a big piece of this is to continue to bang away at the results, the consequences of this. And I don't think we do enough of that either. We're doing more of it. But and increasing the enforcement. And frankly, the concept that we take a young person, we put them in an academy to train them on law enforcement, all facets of law enforcement, whether it's a police department, a sheriff's department, or the state police. We put a lot of time and money into training. We buy them a expensive vehicle with lots of expensive things that go on it. We equip them with protection equipment and gear and all sorts of things. And then we take all that investment and we put it on the side of the highway with somebody with a little radar gun, and we enforce. And we know we're way down for a number of reasons, including stupid ones where we vilified the people that are taking care of us. But we're way down in numbers of our folks that are our first responders, our police and so forth that are out there to protect us. So we're down in numbers, and we got worse driving and less ability to enforce because we're down in numbers. And we have serious crime out there that these people are dealing with, not just stuff on the roads. But we're going to inch closer and closer and closer, I think, to automated enforcement. I was talking about being in Europe. If you've been in Europe, you know different countries do it different ways, but there's a lot of automated enforcement. And perhaps that's the answer. You know, we don't want to go too far, obviously. You don't want to feel like everywhere you go, although it's pretty much everywhere you go, you're on camera. You don't really realize it sometimes, but you are. And, you know, maybe that's the answer. Maybe it's just more of that. But as I said, and I've said this before, we just watched this presentation. We're looking at numbers that are 800 and 900 people dying. And when we had that tragic incident at the 67 people, I think, perished horribly. I used to say that happens every month. That happens every 3 weeks in Virginia on the highways. Every single 3-week period, that's what happens. That's how many people die. And it really doesn't matter how you die, you're dead. And we get used to it because it's drip, 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 as opposed to a big tsunami splash. That's where we are. we need to continue to focus on this, and we need to continue to push. I think at the end of the day, it's a combination of information, make sure everybody knows the rules, make sure they understand the consequences of the rules, and then the enforcement. And until we do all three of those things, I don't think we're going to change. Meantime, we'll work with our federal partners to do this. And I will tell you that DMV and VDOT have money that we spend on these things. And what I'm interested in doing is getting more bang for our buck in those expenditures. Doing that now in a better way than I think they were before in VDOT as well. So I just would tell you we need to continue to focus on this and push on this. It's a legislative thing in many cases and a governor's thing because some of the laws need to change. And I'm personally an advocate for a little bit more than less. Because, you know, if we do something like that and you save 200 or 300 people from being dead every year, wow. That's a real thing. So, thank you, Margie. Are there any questions before we take the test after lunch? Yes, Ms. Dunlop.
Yes, this answer may be available to me by other means, but I'm curious, do we have this breakdown by region? Do we know, where most of these fatalities occur? Question one. And then secondly, do we know which ones are actually related to road conditions versus behavior? And let me just say anecdotally, this morning as I was driving over here, I was on a two-way street, and the motorized scooter that came down the middle of the road toward me, if he'd have hit a rock and been thrown into my car, he might have been killed, but it had nothing to do with the road or my driving, but there would have been a potentially dead person. And, these are the kinds of things that your report, well, it's unnerving to have this many people die. You just wonder what is behind some of these numbers. So that's my question.
Dunlop, when you say road condition, do you mean the underlying condition, or do you mean snow and ice and rain?
No, I mean the underlying condition. I know that weather can.
Well, Margie can give you an answer, but I'm going to give you mine, right? Very little. And I'll use a story. See this too often in this job. When I first took this job, because of the nature of my boss and being new and everything else, I was getting these reports daily, right? When you have 900, it's 2.5 a day, right, on average, every single day. And at some point, you know the information, and you don't need to have it on a daily basis. But it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. But here's my point. You go and look at these things, and you'll get a letter from somebody that says, listen, my son was horribly killed in this accident. And this is a rural, windy road, and it's not well lit, and it's hilly. And they were killed, and we need to do something. And we need to fix the road because it's hilly and it's windy and it's not well lit. And the speed limit is 45, and the young guy was going 103. We're not fixing that road. That's a behavioral problem, right? If they're going the speed limit and the road is not designed properly, that's a whole different matter. We just don't see a lot of that. Now, you will have road conditions, which snowy or icy, but you're supposed to slow down and factor that into how you drive, right? Not always so easy, but you know, the ones I look at, Margie, you jump in here, you know, this isn't about bad design and bad speed limits. It's not about, that's not what it's about. It's about people, in too many cases, making bad choices, and there are consequences of those choices. I see the captain over here shaking his head. He's unfortunately has to see more of this than we do. But it's not, we rarely see, we had a really horrible design that was unsafe. Like, that just doesn't happen, right? It's how we do what we do and the behavior that we exhibit. Margie, is that your?
Yes, sir. I would absolutely agree with what you say. So, Mr. Secretary, Ms. Norton, I think you had two questions. One is, do we know where they happen? Absolutely, we have all of that data. And do we know the cause of the crash? The officers on scene will fill out a crash report, and they will document what could have potentially happened. Some of it very evidence-based, some of it may be more subjective. And the DMV works very closely with state police and other troopers to train people so that they're filling out these forms so that it's more consistent. That data gets compiled. DMV does a lot of work to analyze it and understand the root causes of the problems and the crashes. VDOT also does a lot of that analysis. So if we're looking at an improvement where maybe it wasn't the road that caused the problem, we're going to look at the types of crashes that are occurring, and then we're going to try to solve for those types of crashes. So we definitely use that data to inform, from the highway side, our investments. And then from a DMV side, I would assume that they're using a lot of that to help drive some of their behavioral analysis and where they're investing their funding as well. We know that seatbelt utilization is an issue. We know that speeding is an issue.
Let me jump in there. There's a high correlation between no seatbelt and fatality. High correlation. You know, seatbelts don't always save you. But if you look at the statistics, the correlation is pretty apparent, pretty stunning, that if you don't have your seatbelt on, your risk is greatly inflated. And you know, we've now, starting in 7 days, we'll have a new law on the books that says you're required to wear your seatbelt in the back seat. And you can be ticketed if you do not. The driver can be ticketed. The problem with that, and some people think that's overreach, but the problem with that is that it's a secondary offense. So you got to be ticketed. You have to be stopped for some other reason. And there's a lot of those things that we've made secondary offenses for. Some taillight stuff, some registration stuff, some inspection stuff, and we just say, no, you can't enforce this for a period of time. And so another one is tinted glass, right? The tinted glass law is, let me say it this way, a preponderance of the tinted glass that's added after the factory is illegal in Virginia. So imagine you're a police officer and you got a car that you're stopping that's full of tinted glass and you can't see in it. You know, that's a whole different unhappy situation for me. That makes me very uneasy. But I can't see whether they have a seatbelt on because they've got the glasses tinted. And I can't give them a ticket for too tinted glass because we won't let people do that as a primary. At the end of the day, we need to get real here, folks. We need to have laws that are important, and that if you break them, there need to be consequences. And we need to let the police officers and the law enforcement officers do their jobs. But we put all these barriers in front of them, and we get what you would expect. So the seatbelt law will come in effect. You can't make it a primary, and even if you could, sometimes you can't see it because there's the non-primary tinted glass problem. And here you go. So I've never been a police officer, but I've talked to plenty of them, and they're frustrated, and that's where we are. So. Anyone else? Thank you, Ms. Ray. Appreciate it very much. The next item on the agenda is Director Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I will be brief because I know that we have lunch coming up, and I'm sure everyone has read my director's report in your packet. I really just wanted to highlight one thing, and the Secretary mentioned it earlier in the meeting, and it's related to VRE. Ridership across the Commonwealth, including WMATA and VRE, is up. In our most recent data, there's a lag in ridership data, so we're looking at finalized March numbers right now. That's a good thing, but VRE is really our superstar at this point in time. They doubled their numbers in just 2 months, so the ridership was 117,000 trips in January, and it jumped to 241,000 trips in March. That's
why that
really
happened.
good news.
Why did that happen, Director?
There's a lot of people back to work.
Oh, my goodness
Which is-
gracious.
Good news as well. I also wanted to mention that because at last Friday's VRE Operations Board meeting, Rich Dalton, VRE's CEO, announced that he would be retiring in July. He's been a really great partner, and he came on as their COO back in 2009 and became CEO in 2020 during a really challenging time. And they've been slow to come back from the pandemic, but the past few months, 6 months to the last few months have been really remarkable progress. So that's all I wanted to highlight for today.
What percent of that is to pre-pandemic level? What percent are we at now at VRE?
They are back to above pre-pandemic level. I don't have that off the top of my head. Everybody's back to above pre-pandemic level for 2019, which is a great thing. I forgot to mention that their March numbers are 70, not only did they double numbers in the last 2 months, but they're 72% higher year over year from March of 2024.
So for those of you who aren't as familiar, VRE is functionally a commuter line.
Yes.
Didn't run on weekends, didn't run at night. Took people to work and brought them back. That's what it did. And when they didn't go to work anymore, when they didn't go to the office anymore, then there was nobody to take. And so their numbers went through the floor. And now, as you would expect, when people are required to go back in the office, they need to commute. And so they're back on the train. It's pretty simple. I do hope, and I think Mr. Dalton's done great, and so he deserves his retirement. But I do hope that VRE will continue to look at how to be more, not just a commuter line, but serve the nights and the weekends better. Because at the end of the day, I mean, we've got trains, we've got tracks, and we got people that want to move, right? And it's a great little system, right? Great partners of ours. And if you can get there, I mean, who wouldn't get in reliable, safe, and affordable transit that goes to where you want to go much easier and quicker than going some other way? I certainly do. I'll do that all day long, right? But it needs to be reliable. It needs to be safe. And it needs to be able to go where you want to go. And VRE does a lot of those things, and so I hope that they will be able to continue to expand into those timeframes as it makes sense, because I think there could be real good utilization there.
That is definitely in the works, Mr. Secretary, and it's going to be expedited with the purchase of the Manassas line, which is great news. Their on-time arrivals are getting better and better month over month as well. All good news for VRE.
So what the director is referencing, as you know, is when we negotiated the deal for Christiansburg. We, as a part of that, thankfully, Norfolk Southern was willing to renegotiate the Manassas line, and we were able to acquire that. And now VRE's acquired pieces of that from us to make this work better. So that was a really great day for transportation in Virginia when that got redone. All right, any questions of the director? Yes, Ms. Dunlop.
Forgive me for not knowing the answer to this, Madam Director, but where exactly does VRE operate? I mean, what what is the outmost port in the storm for VRE, and where does it actually go?
Excuse me, the secretary may correct me, but it is DC, Northern Virginia, all the way up through, there's a train that goes to Norfolk. Trying to remember the routes.
Not VRE.
What do you, I was talking to
The VRE.
Carol, I apologize.
She wanted to know the extent.
The breadth of the VRE.
And out to Manassas.
Yeah, Northern Virginia,
It's Spotsylvania.
yeah.
And
Thank you,
in the
Zach.
south to even up to Union Station, and then it goes out to Manassas on the west.
So it's basically Northern Virginia.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely,
Fredericksburg
absolutely.
North.
Fredericksburg.
Yeah. Spotsylvania is kind of the most recent addition to it.
And points beyond that are essentially Amtrak that you work in partnership with.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, Metro and other things, local transit.
Yes. Okay.
One question.
Yes,
Mr.
sir, Ms.
Secretary.
Davis.
Just looking at the statewide transit ridership, where you're showing all the improvements, and it's a 13-period look. When we drop down a couple slides and go look at Virginia Breeze ridership, would it be possible to see that in the 13 period as well? So you're looking at a March versus a March. It seems to be, for a reader of this information, I can certainly go back and look at
We can do
last
that.
month's report.
We can do that.
So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good story to tell, and I think you'd want to tell it, so, yeah.
Yep, we'll
Yeah.
make those simultaneous for the next report.
Anyone else? And now, the Deputy Commissioner, who is ably filling the role of Commissioner today.
Thank you.
Ma'am, Kathy McGee.
I just wanted to follow up on the comment you made about automated speed enforcement in New Kent. Just to let you all know, we are happy to be partnering with the sheriff in New Kent County to put automated speed enforcement in the Gap work zone there in the county. The signs will go up next week on Monday, we believe. There will be a 30-day warning period before you actually get a ticket you have to pay in the mail. But we are definitely looking forward to the enhanced safety that will provide in the work zone. We do see a lot of noncompliance with the work zone speed limits, and so we're looking forward to that partnership with the county. We are continuing to work with Virginia State Police on their program for automated speed enforcement. We do believe we're getting closer and may have a VSP deployment this fall. We've also issued a permit to the sheriff in Wythe County for the work zone there on I-81, and that is an active system. The signs are up. You should be aware if you drive through that tickets are being issued through that work zone. Again, you must be going 10 miles an hour over the speed limit, whatever that posted work zone speed limit is, and tickets can only be issued when workers are present through the automated system. But we do believe that we will see improvements in safety. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about that, but I do believe it's a good thing.
Any questions? You know, a lot of the debate goes around localities just trying to do a money grab here. And I understand that concern. And my answer is always pretty simple. Don't speed. Like, if you're breaking the law and they're going to raise some money off of it, and you don't like that, then don't break the law. I don't know what else to say. So, thank you, Ms. McGee. In terms of my comments today, I will be brief. I've got some fantastic news that I want to share with you, and that is that Dr. Smoot and Mr. Stant are being reappointed, so they will continue here. That will be reported 1st of July by the governor, but I gave you a little sneak preview, and I hope he doesn't get mad at me, Governor. But they've been, as you know, they've been valued colleagues, and I'm just really glad that we can keep them on this board. So, gentlemen, good work. With that, I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to close this meeting and adjourn it, and then I'm going to open the public meeting because we have someone here from Alexandria that would like to speak. And after they speak and anybody else who has public comments, I'll recess so we can go to lunch. I just didn't want to make them have to sit around while we ate lunch if they preferred not to. So with that, I'm going to adjourn the workshop meeting, and I'm going to call the action meeting into order. So now we're in order in the action meeting, and the first item on the agenda is public comments. We have Hillary Orr, who's the Deputy Director of Transportation of Alexandria, who's come here today. Welcome. I hope you're well.
Thank you very much, and thank you for letting me go before lunch. I appreciate that. Good afternoon,
We
Secretary
won't tell
Miller.
them in Alexandria, so you can tarry on your way home and just.
Good afternoon, Secretary Miller and members of the board. Again, my name is Hillary Orr. I'm from the city of Alexandria, and here with me today is also Michael Moon, the director of our department. And on behalf of the city, I want to express our appreciation for your leadership and continued partnership as we work together to deliver meaningful transportation improvements in our region. We recognize that successful infrastructure delivery depends on trust, coordination, and shared commitment. And over the past year, we've worked in close coordination with your team, building a more transparent, responsive, and solutions-driven approach to project delivery. We view this not just as collaboration, but as joint responsibility for both of us to deliver to our communities. The city's work with VDOT through the Locally Sustained Performance Program has truly been a turning point for us. The guidance and collaboration from VDOT has helped us really take a hard look at our internal processes and make meaningful changes of how we manage, prioritize, and deliver our projects. We're now building the kind of structure and discipline that not only improves our outcomes, but puts us on a path to serve as a model for best practices in project implementation in the years ahead. Internally, the city is undergoing a focused transformation in how we manage and execute our capital projects through restructured internal workflows, investment in better tracking tools, early coordination with VDOT, and making faster decisions when necessary. We've created internal dashboards that help us align more effectively with VDOT's reporting needs and performance standards. We're also evaluating our current project workload to assess what's active, what's ready, and what needs to be prioritized. And that brings me to the East Glebe Road and Route 1 project that was brought up earlier today. After reevaluating the project with updated data, we found limited traffic benefits and potentially significant disruption to our community with the construction of that project. Meanwhile, other efforts like our Route 1 bus rapid transit extension and our smart mobility partnerships with Virginia Tech are advancing the same goals of that project, but in a more modern and less disruptive way to our community. So by canceling this project, we're making a decision to focus on delivering higher impact initiatives that better reflect our current priorities. Finally, I want to briefly acknowledge your upcoming action on item number 10, Alexandria's withdrawal of our smart scale application for the Duke Street and Route 1 project. While the project did receive strong technical score, the city made the strategic decision to withdraw this application this round to reinforce the progress that we are making on performance improvement and to maintain the momentum and the collaboration with the state. We're fully invested in working alongside VDOT and the team to deliver impactful transportation improvements grounded in strong financial stewardship and smart use of our public resources. So we want to thank the board and especially Mr. Gribben, our Northern Virginia representative, for your leadership. And we look forward to continuing the partnership to ensure that the city is well positioned and to be successful in upcoming funding opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Orr. Appreciate it very much. Let me just make a couple comments. I said some of these earlier, but I'm not sure you were here then either. We're ecstatic to work with you to make this be as good as it can possibly be. And I salute your mayor and your council and all of y'all for working with us in a cooperative way. And I pledge to you that we will be cooperative and helpful during this process and get you to be where you deserve to be. Alexandria is a fantastic city. I love Alexandria. It's one of my favorite places in Virginia. It's got so much charm and so much goodness about it. And the project you were talking about, my sister used to live in that neighborhood nearby. I'm very familiar with it. So it's just a great part of the Commonwealth. I think you're lucky to be there, and we look forward to working together to make this world-class.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that wants to comment today? Hearing none, I'm going to recess this meeting, and we're going to go to lunch, and we'll be back in about 40 minutes. Action item back into order. Appreciate the folks who were served us lunch and allowed us to sustain ourselves for the rest of the day here. We've had public comment. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak? Hearing none, we'll move to the approval of the minutes. The minutes were distributed in your package. Are there any comments, questions, or corrections for the minutes? Hearing none, I take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Ms. Sellers moves. Mr. Laird seconds. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. Are there any abstentions? Thank you very much.
I wasn't here last week.
We don't do that. You're out of order. That would be appropriate, though. I always thought that, how do you prove something you don't know about? But people seem to do it all the time, so. Let's reflect that Mr. Coleman abstained because he was out having fun instead of working like the rest of us. Just kidding, Mr. Coleman. All right, first item on the agenda, the first numbered item on the agenda is action on the commemorative naming and request of Pennsylvania County of the bridge on State Route 40 East Gretna Road over Georges Creek, Pennsylvania County as the Hale, is it Halley?
Hale.
Is it Hale?
Yes, sir.
Pardon me. It's the Hale Shelton Memorial Bridge located within the Lynchburg District. Mr. Gregg.
Thank you, sir. The Pennsylvania County Board of Supervisors enacted a resolution on April 15th, 2025 to honor the life and service to his community of Hale Shelton. According to that resolution, Mr. Shelton was born February 28th, 1924 in Pennsylvania County and spent his entire life in the Ray community, a small rural area that shaped his values and his legacy. He was a lifelong farmer who lived and worked along the banks of Georges Creek, tending to his tobacco fields, caring for his livestock, building a life for his family, in close connection with the land and his community. The bridge over Georges Creek stands near the very place where he was born and where he spent his entire life, making it meaningful and fitting location to honor his memory and legacy. Hale Shelton passed away on October 11th, 1988. Naming this bridge in Mr. Shelton's honor would serve as a lasting tribute to a man whose life was deeply rooted in the land, people, and values of Ray, Virginia. And VDOT has received no public comment on this proposal.
Is there a motion to approve?
Make the motion to approve.
Ms. Green moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Sellers seconds. Before we vote, let me just say this. When you read, I didn't have an opportunity to know this gentleman, but when you read about him, what was extraordinary about him was he was a common man. He was a great guy. He didn't discover, the cure for cancer. He didn't do this. He just was a great American, a great Virginian, a great guy from Pennsylvania County who took care of his family, took care of his community, and that's what Virginians are all about. That's what Americans are all about. And so just reading through that, it just really sort of warmed my heart that we're smart enough to recognize those kinds of folks who really represent the important fabric of our community and who we are. So with that, if you will recognize Mr. Shelton's, this resolution by rising with me, please. Amen. Well done, sir. Action item number 2, action on the commemorative naming at the request of Lee County of the section of the alternate U.S. Route 58 from its beginning in the town of Jonesville northeast to the Lee County/Wise County line is the Lloyd C. Sonny Martin Memorial Highway located within the Bristol District. Mr. Gregg.
The Lee County Board of Supervisors enacted a resolution on March 18th, 2025, to honor the life and service to his community of Lloyd C. Sonny Martin. Additionally, the Town Council of the Town of Pennington Gap passed a resolution supporting the naming on April the 21st, 2025, and the Town Council of the Town of Jonesville passed a resolution supporting the naming on April the 8th. According to the Lee County resolution, Mr. Martin was born on July the 7th, 1935, and grew up in St. Charles. He proudly served 2 years in the United States Army, 1st Battle Group, 3rd Infantry. He also served in many other capacities, including 8 years on the Virginia Commonwealth Transportation Board under 4 governors, 6 years on the Town Council of Pennington Gap, 2 terms on the Virginia Bankers Association Board of Directors, 60 years as a 32nd degree member of the Masonic Fraternity, and worked over 60 years in the banking business, serving as president, CEO, and a member of the board of directors at Powell Valley National Bank. For his efforts for the betterment of Lee County and the surrounding area, Mr. Martin was awarded the Patrick Henry Award for Community Service on behalf of the governor and of the Commonwealth of Virginia, and he continued to serve the region until his death on March 8th, 2018. VDOT has received no public comment on this proposal.
So motion to approve?
Mr. Chairman, I move approval, and I also would like to add that in addition to the things that were just mentioned, he and I served together on the VEDP board for a number of years, and so he was a son of Lee County, was a distinguished citizen, and did a lot of great things for the whole region of Southwest Virginia, and so it's a privilege for me to move approval of this resolution.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Ms. Dunlop seconds. Before I ask for your vote, let me say this. When I joined this board 15 years ago, Sonny was my colleague. And he being a banker, he knew my father-in-law, who was a banker here in Richmond and throughout the state. And Sonny was one of those classic Virginia gentleman types. He was a great colleague to work with. He was a gentleman. He was smart and thoughtful and did great work on this board. And as a younger board member, if you will, younger meaning to the board, and he was older than I am anyway, you know, we looked upon people like him for guidance and advice and counsel. And he did that very quietly. Wasn't a loud person like some people we know, but he was very impactful. And on my sink at home, my vanity in my bathroom, I have a little travel clock that's a little battery-operated clock that people used to give out, right, in the old days, before nobody wanted travel clocks anymore because they had phones and watches and all sorts of things. But it was a travel clock that we got when we went down to make a CTB visit down there. And I can't remember, I'm gonna have to go back and look and see what, it came from a bank, I think it may come from his bank, but it still sits there and tells me what time it is every morning when I go into the bathroom. And that's Sonny for me. That's how I remember him every day. So great guy. He served a couple terms on this board, and we served for 4 years together during my first term. So what a great guy. And I'm really proud to be able to stand and signify my affirmation of this. So if you'll join with me, I appreciate it. Amen. Number 3, Mr. Gregg, action on commemorative naming at the request of Southampton County of the bridge on Route 647 River Road of the Assamosic Swamp. Southampton County is the Jordan Walter Whitehead Jr. Memorial Bridge located within the Hampton Roads District. Mr. Gregg.
Southampton County Board of Supervisors enacted a resolution on April the 22nd of this year to honor the life, service to his country and community, and ultimate sacrifice of Jordan Walter Whitehead, Jr. According to that resolution, Mr. Whitehead grew up in Cortland, Virginia, where his parents and grandparents also lived. In January of 1941, he enlisted in the United States Navy in Norfolk, Virginia, and when he turned 18 on May the 15th, he immediately reported for duty without waiting to attend his high school graduation. He completed the basic training and sailorization as a seaman second class at the Bainbridge Naval Training Center in Maryland and was then assigned as a gunner's mate to the USS Savannah, a Brooklyn-class light cruiser. At 9:44 a.m. on Saturday, September 11th, 1943, after many earlier attempts to damage or destroy the Savannah, Germany successfully dropped a radio-controlled Fritz X glided bomb onto the gun turret 3, where Mr. Whitehead was regularly stationed. He and 207 other sailors were killed. Most died immediately and horrifically. He was posthumously awarded the Purple Heart, the Navy Good Conduct Medal, and the European, African, Middle East Campaign Medal. He was the first person of an estimated 1,000 military men and women from Southampton County to be killed in action during the Second World War. The bridge crosses the run of the Assamusic Swamp as it makes its way through the lowgrounds to the Nottoway River next to Mr. Whitehead's family farm and to other Whitehead property. Mr. Whitehead, his brothers enjoyed swimming, fishing, turtling up and down the Moosic, the local name for the expansive swamp. The location of this bridge abuts properties presently or formerly owned by Mr. Whitehead's mother's Rowe family and his father's Whitehead family. VDOT has received no public comment on this proposal.
Mr. Gray, Mr. Stanton. The motion to approve, Mr. Coleman seconds. What a fitting tribute and a place for him. So please signify your affirmation by rising. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Next item on the agenda is item number 4, action on limited access control changes for the North Sycamore Street Improvement Project at I-66 in Arlington County, located within the Northern Virginia District. Mr. Helsel, welcome. Hope you're well today.
I am, sir. It's a fine day to be alive and well in the Commonwealth.
Sir.
Sir, this project is in Northern Virginia, Arlington County. The proposed project provides for the realignment of an existing spur of the 4-mile run trail in the southeast quadrant of the intersection of North Sycamore Street and an on-ramp to the eastbound I-66. So the limited access control changes necessary to effect that realignment. A notice of willingness for a public hearing was posted, but there were no comments from the public or requests for a hearing. This request is also supported by a letter from the County Board of Supervisors, and we have completed our environmental due diligence. With favorable dispensation, we will move the project along to its next phases of development, and I recommend the board's approval of the request.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Griffin.
I move that we do that. Exactly what that gentleman said.
Perfect. We've got a motion from Mr. Griffin, eloquently given, and a second from Ms. Sellers. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Are there any abstentions? Thank you all very much.
Thank you, sir.
Item number 5, action on approval of the Federal Transportation Grant Anticipation Revenue Notes, meaning Garvey's Memorandum of Understanding, MOU. And actually, although Garveys are actually named for a lady named Jane Garvey. You don't spell her name with 2 E's, but that's who's named after her, and she is a dynamic pioneer in the transportation space who still is pioneering. Great lady. Ms. Farmer.
Yes, sir. So I did not workshop this item because it's a very simple explanation, and I hope you'll forgive me for that. As referenced in the resolution and decision brief, this board has approved this document as an MOA with Federal Highway in 2017. in the last iteration of it. Since that time, the Federal Highway Administration created a new template back in 2018 to be used for this document with the states going forward, as each state has a Garvey program. And then we began reviewing our arrangements recently and decided to advance and update using the new template. And so that structure is different and the title is changed from an MOA to an MOU. The administration of the Garvey program between FHWA and VDOT and the board has not changed. And so the only item is clarity on its effective period and the review cycle. So at the end of the document, the parties will amend this MOU as needed to reflect material changes and will review it at least every 5 years to determine if changes are needed. And so that just provides clarity on the review cycle, and I'd be happy to take any questions you have.
Thank you, Ms. Farmer. Are there any questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Ms. Sellers moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Dr. Smoot seconds. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Are there any abstentions? Thank you, Ms. Farmer. Annual budgets. Action on fiscal year 2026 annual budgets, Commonwealth Transportation Fund, Department of Rail and Public Transportation, and the Virginia Department of Transportation. Ms. Farmer and Ms. O'Leary.
Sir, on behalf of DRPT and VDOT, we bring the 3 budget documents for fiscal year 2026 that we have briefed drafts and finals on today. I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
Any further questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve? Mr. Folks moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Green seconds. Did I get that right? So we have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Are there any abstentions? Thank you very much.
Mr. Secretary?
Yes, ma'am.
While I'm here, if I could answer Mr. Lawson's question from earlier today.
No, absolutely not. Yes, ma'am.
So related to the aviation fuels tax, my understanding, based on a read of the code, is it's a 5%, 5 cents per gallon tax up to 100,000 gallons. So anything in excess of 100,000, I believe.
Statutorily limited.
Yes, sir. It's
$2 million.
It's tax-free beyond that, is my understanding.
Let me say this, we there's lots of work to do in the code, as there always is in any code, but one of the things we found out and we got fixed in the code was to register your airplane in Virginia, your airplane, there was a $5 charge. You had to fill out a form in paper, send it in annually, every year, with your $5 check. We'd process that, and then we'd send you back a sticker that you were supposed to put on your airplane like you do on your license plate, which I want to get rid of those stickers too, General Assembly, thank you very much. And it was really a dumb process, right? So it's statutorily in code. And it was dated back forever long, dated back. So we were able to get it to be changed. I think it's $35 now. You can go up to 3 years, and we're putting it online, and there are no stickers, right? So let's just get into the 21st century here, folks. We need to do the same thing with license plates, General Assembly. Thank you. Because those stickers, and the captain can correct me if I'm wrong, but the law enforcement people tell me they don't use those anymore. They read their license plates, and they know whether it's registered and whether it's current or whether it's not. And so those stickers cost us millions of dollars, and millions of people go to the DMV at the last minute to get stickers for their license plates, and we need to get rid of them. I'm sorry. Yes, thank you, Ms. Farmer.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson.
Thank you.
Now, I digressed. Item number 7, action on the FY 2026 Arlington and Henrico Counties maintenance payments. Ms. Angel Dean, welcome. Hope you're well today.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Mr. Secretary, members of the board, item number 7 is for this board's approval of maintenance payments to the counties of Henrico and Arlington for support for maintenance of their secondary system. Consistent with the presentation to this board in May, this resolution and its attachments detail the payment rates to be applied, as well as the overweight permit fee revenues to be distributed quarterly, and I recommend your approval.
Are there any comments or questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Mr. Cribbin moves.
Second.
Mr. Davis seconds. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Are there any abstentions? Thank you very much. Item number 8, action on payments to cities, certain towns in Warren County for maintenance of certain roads and streets, FY 2026. Ms. Dean.
Yes, sir. Item number 8 is for this board's approval of maintenance payments to qualifying cities and towns at the rates and amounts detailed in the attachments, as well as the overweight permit fee distribution and payments to Warren County and the cities of Newport News, Portsmouth, and Norfolk to compensate for tax-exempt real estate owned by the Virginia Port Authority in those jurisdictions. And finally, this resolution authorizes $1 million to the city of Chesapeake for the additional maintenance costs they incur for maintenance of movable structures within the city. Recommend your approval.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions? Mr. Stant. Mr. Lawson.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Are there any abstentions? Thank you, Ms. Dean. Item number 9, action on the governor's TPOF project funding. Mr. John Lawson.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. This action item is for you to act upon the governor's direction to allocate TPOF funds. In this particular one, it's $20 million to the I-64 Exit 211 Interchange Improvement Project. This will be the project that we spoke about this morning, and County Administrator Hathaway here presented to you. The roadway work that will support the significant economic investment in that area.
Are there any comments or questions? Mr. Davis.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Are there any abstentions? Thank you very much. Item number 10, action on adoption of Smart Scale Round 6 consensus recommendation, follow-up from May. Ms. Brooke Jackson, welcome. Hope you're well.
I am, thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Secretary and members of the board. Good to see you. I am here to reaffirm the adoption of the fiscal year 2026 consensus scenario for Smart Scale. You heard a lot of discussion today, whether it was from Mr. Gribbin, the City of Alexandria, or from the Secretary himself, regarding the withdrawal of the Round 6 City of Alexandria project. So I am just here to formalize that request and move along with the consensus scenario, and I recommend approval.
Are there any comments or questions? Mr. Gribbin.
I move that we move forward with this.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second? Mr. Lawson seconds. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Are there any abstentions? Thank you very much. Does that conclude our agenda? Where's the page? I hid the page. Pryor, you're out. Wow. Oh, my. We got a lot of work to do here, Ms. Pryor. Item number 11, action on the FY 25 to 36-year improvement program transfers for April 19th, 2025 through May 16th, 2025, including greater than threshold highway construction district grant transfers. Ms. Pryor.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, members of the board. You have the monthly transfer report in front of you. I will point out that there are 3 construction district grant transfers that exceed the threshold set out in your Smart Scale policy. Those lines are 8, 12, and 13 on the report, and they're highlighted for your easy reference. And the additional information normally provided to accompany those transfers is attached to the transfer report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any comments or questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve, Mr. Coleman?
Second.
Coleman moves, and Mr. Folks, was it Mr. Folks seconded? Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. We have a motion and we have a second. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Are there any abstentions? Thank you very much. Item number 12, action on the 6-year improvement program in rail and public transportation allocations for fiscal years 2026 through 2031. Ms. Pryor.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, members of the board. On behalf of DRPT and VDOT, I have a resolution before you to approve the adoption of the FY '26 to 2031 six-year improvement program, as I briefed you earlier today, and I recommend your approval.
So moved.
Dr. Smoot, is there further discussion or any questions? Dr. Smoot's made a motion to move, to approve. Ms. Sellers seconds, Ms. Green seconds. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. Are there any abstentions? Thank you very much. Item number 13, Chief Engineer subbing in again. Where is Mr. Coker?
Mr. Coker is in line at DMV getting his decals.
Well, the good news is it's only taking 15 minutes, so. Thank you, Mr. Chief Engineer.
Sir, we have one project to bring before the board today. Fall Line Trail, the southern section, location city of Petersburg. We had 3 bids. Best value bid was by Alan Myers at $63 million. It did exceed our range. We do recommend approval because we believe it's good value. I'll be happy to entertain any questions you may have on it.
Are there comments or questions? Hearing none, Mr. Davis?
So moved.
Motion to approve, is there a second? Laird? Mr. Laird, you're so demure. We have a motion and we have a second. Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Are there any abstentions? Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Mr.
sir.
Strasher. So I think we're down to new business. Is there any new business? And before we adjourn, my dear bride was born in this city 68 years ago today. And if you know anything about my wife, she's all about her birthday, right? And it's not the day before, it's not the day after, none of that works, it's the day. So this is the day. So happy birthday, sweetheart, I love you. Happy birthday. Means adjourned.